straighten it. Faites l'appel, s'il vous plaît, Madame le greffier.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Hélier. Madame le connétable de Saint-Laurent.
Présente.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Brelade. Monsieur le connétable de la Trinité.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Pierre.
Présent.
Madame le connétable de Saint-Martin.
Présente.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Jean.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Clément.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Grouville.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Ouen. Monsieur le connétable de Sainte-Marie.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Sauveur.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Southern.
Présent.
Madame le député Labey.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Tadier. Monsieur le député Luce.
Présent.
Madame le député Dublé.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Morel.
Présent.
Madame le député Lehegara.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Ayer. Monsieur le député Ward.
Présent.
Madame le député Alves. Madame le député Gardner.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Ghost.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Farnham.
Présent.
Madame le député Moore. Monsieur le député Mezek.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Osef.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Balash.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Coles.
Présent.
Madame le député Poré. Monsieur le député Ward.
Présent.
Madame le député Miles.
Présente.
Madame le député Scott.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Renouf.
Présent.
Madame le député Curtis. Madame le député Feltham. Madame le député Binet. Madame le député Jeune.
Présente.
Madame le député Miller.
Présente.
Madame le député Howell.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Binet. Monsieur le député Ferry.
Présent.
Madame le député Kovacs.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Curtis. Madame le député Ward.
Présente.
Madame le député Wilson.
Présente.
Madame le député Stevenson. Monsieur le député Andrews.
Monsieur le doyen.
Notre aide soit au nom de Dieu qui a fait le ciel et la terre. Amen. Seigneur Dieu, Père éternel et tout-puissant, qui a établi le gouvernement et les puissances de la terre, pour le règlement et pour la conduite du peuple, et qui nous a commandé d'avoir toujours pour but la gloire de ton saint nom. Nous te prions qu'il te plaise de donner à cette assemblée le don de conseil et de prudence, d'unir les cœurs et les affections de tous ceux qui la composent, de les conduire tellement toi-même par ton Saint-Esprit que toute leur délibération est accompagnée de ta bénédiction. Réussisse au bien et au soulagement du peuple, qu'il te plut de mettre à leurs soins. Car nous t'en prions au nom et par le mérite de ton Fils bien-aimé Jésus-Christ, notre Seigneur, qui nous a enseigné de t'invoquer en disant: Notre Père, qui es aux cieux, ton nom soit sanctifié, ton règne vienne, ta volonté soit faite sur la terre comme au ciel. Donne-nous aujourd'hui notre pain quotidien, et nous pardonnons nos offenses, comme nous pardonnons à ceux qui nous ont offensés. Et ne nous envoie point en tentation, mais délivre-nous du mal. Car à toi le règne, la puissance et la gloire, au siècle des siècles. Amen.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Hélier. Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Brelade.
Sir, the Connétable of St. Brelade is out of the island on States business at APF conference.
An APF conference. Very well. State's business.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Ouen.
Malade.
Vous jurez que Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Ouen est tellement indisposé qu'il ne peut pas résister aux États sans exposer sa santé. Monsieur le Deputy Tadier.
Deputy Tadier is as well at the APF conference in States Business.
States Business.
Monsieur le Deputy Ayer.
Présent.
Madame le Deputy Alves.
Présente.
Madame le Deputy Moore.
Deputy Moore, Madam, is on States Business at the same French Parliamentary Conference.
States Business.
Madame le Deputy Poré. Madame le Deputy Feltham.
Malade.
Vous jurez que Madame le Deputy Feltham est tellement indisposée qu'elle ne peut pas assister aux états sans exposer sa santé. Madame le Deputy Stevenson.
Diffel. Oh, excused. I beg your pardon. You're quite right. So yes. Oh, les États sont constitués. We'll start on communications from the presiding officer. I'm sure many members already know, but I'm delighted to report that Deputy Kovacs became the new Parliamentarian of the Year last week in the conference in Sydney. I was going to say, would members like to congratulate her, but clearly that gun has been jumped. Members will have been saddened, I'm sure, to hear of the death last week of former Deputy Jerry Dorey. Jeremy Lawrence Dorey, known as Jerry, was first elected as a deputy of St Helier No. 1 district on the 9th of December 1993 and was re-elected to that role in 1996. He stood for and was elected as a senator in February of 1999 until he resigned on the 6th of July of that year, and that he was then re-elected as a deputy for St Helier No. 1 on the 9th of December 1999, and for a further 3-year term on the 12th of December 2002 until he lost his seat in the 2005 general election. Although he was born in Ealing in London in 1956, he was educated at Victoria College in Jersey before attending Exeter College, Oxford, where he obtained an MA in French. Prior to entering the States, he worked as a freelance computer programmer in Jersey. During his time in the Assembly, he served on a variety of committees, including Education, Health, Broadcasting, Housing, Employment and Social Security, and was elected President of Agriculture and Fisheries, Public Services and Human Resources at various stages in his tenure. He also sat on 2 committees of inquiry, one for the Marina and one on limited liability partnerships. He was a scrutineer of legislation, and it was as such that he shone, because he was meticulous and thorough in reviewing draft laws lodged for debate. He was an intelligent individual who could speak a number of languages fluently and had a keen eye for accuracy, often to the annoyance of his colleagues. It was felt that his failure to be re-elected at a close-run election when he lost by fewer than 30 votes in 2005 was a great loss to the island for the quality of his legislative scrutiny. He left Jersey to live in France with his beloved cats, and it was there that he passed away on the 2nd of November after a short illness, just a month shy of his 73rd birthday. I understand that his funeral is being held today in France, and our thoughts are with his son, Will, and his grandchildren and extended family at this sad time. And I would ask members to stand and observe the customary minute of silence. May he rest in peace. There are a number of subordinate enactments tabled under B. A number of matters have been presented or laid as described in the consolidated order paper under section C, and the following matters have been lodged under section D. Proposed Budget Government Plan 2025 to 28 P51 Second Amendment, lodged by Deputy Miles. The same Third Amendment, lodged by Corporate Services Scrutiny Panel. The same Fourth Amendment, lodged by Corporate Services Scrutiny Panel. The same, the Fifth Amendment, lodged by the Children, Education and Home Affairs Scrutiny Panel. The same Sixth Amendment, lodged by a Hospital Review Panel. The same Seventh Amendment, lodged by Deputy Dublé. The same, the Eighth Amendment, lodged by Deputy Miles. The same, the Ninth Amendment, lodged by Deputy Jeune. The same, the 10th Amendment, lodged by the Health and Social Security Scrutiny Panel. The same, the 11th Amendment, lodged by the Environment, Housing and Infrastructure Scrutiny Panel. The same, the 12th Amendment, lodged by Deputy Jeune. The 13th Amendment, lodged by Deputy Renouf. The 14th Amendment, lodged by Deputy Gardner. The 15th Amendment, lodged by the Children, Education and Home Affairs Scrutiny Panel. The 16th Amendment, lodged by Deputy Ozef. The 17th Amendment, lodged by Deputy Wilson. And the draft Royal Court and Stamp Duties and Fees Jersey Amendment, lodged by Deputy Balash. The Pets in Rental Properties Amendment, lodged by Deputy War. The draft Finance 2025 Budget Jersey Law Amendment, lodged by the Environment, Housing and Infrastructure Scrutiny Panel. Amendment to Standing Orders, miscellaneous amendments lodged by the Privileges and Procedures Committee. Draft Single-Use Plastics, etc. Restrictions Jersey Amendment, lodged by the Minister for Infrastructure. Draft Employment and Discrimination Jersey Amendment Law P78, lodged by the Minister for Social Security. And the draft Termination of Pregnancy Jersey Amendment Law, lodged by the Minister for Health and Social Services. There are no matters under E, F and G or H. Under questions, the answers to written questions have been tabled in the usual way, and we come now to oral questions.
Sir.
Yes,
Just in connection with written questions, I received an email last night at about 10 to 6 with a late response to one of my written questions. However, I'd written to the Infrastructure Minister in connection with his answer to written question 355, which
355.
Yeah, which I felt was not particularly accurate. I've written directly to the Infrastructure Minister who on the 1st of November, who advised me that not going to be able to answer that question until Wednesday of this week. And I just wanted to know if that's an acceptable time delay.
Well, as you will know, Deputy Standing Orders require that the question is answered in enough time for the meeting so that members can read what the answer is. But if I were asked to rule on it, I would in any event give until tomorrow for a revised answer to be prepared. So in effect, I think the result is the same, that the Minister will table his answer tomorrow.
Thank you, sir.
Sir, point of order, please.
Yes?
Thank you. I received a response to a question from the Minister for Sustainable Economic Development in response to question 403.
403, yes.
Yes, and I wondered if you could consider it on the basis as to whether or not it actually contravenes section 2A of Standing Order 12, please, as I don't believe the question's been answered. Thank you.
Right. Well, then I will look at that over the lunch and adjournment and advise members of my view on it after lunch, the usual way. If you, Deputy, have a particular reason for thinking it hasn't been answered, then if you could reduce that to an email, that would be helpful for me to assist my consideration. Otherwise, I simply look at it on its terms. Very well. Very well. We come now to oral questions. And the first question, Deputy Gardiner, will ask of the Minister for Sustainable and Economic Development. Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister advise what his current plans are for the provision of the ferry service for Jersey for the next 12 months and for the longer term? And will he detail any anticipated financial implications?
Minister.
Thank you, sir, and I thank the Deputy for her question. Sir, first of all, if you will allow me, I just would like to apologise to members for choosing not to make a statement this morning. I wrote to members yesterday. What I understood and what I realised was we're moving from one process into another process, and a statement on those matters in the middle of that process would be difficult and potentially prejudicial in one way, shape or form to the outcome of that process, which is why I chose not to make a statement. It is my intention to fully inform the states at an appropriate time. So I do hope and intend to make a statement in the future. And I thank ministers, I thank members for their perseverance. With regard to the question more directly, as the members will know, we have moved from, we have ended our participation in the joint Channel Islands tender process, and we're now moving to a new tender process for Jersey-only services. So that process is ongoing, but in the meantime, it has to be said that Condor have confirmed that they will not be accepting the invitation to extend the current operating agreement beyond March next year. This means Condor will continue to sail under the current operating agreement until the end of March 2025, at which point a new operating agreement will be in place. So as far as financial implications are concerned, the direct financial implications, I do not know of any that are particularly there. Obviously, the processes themselves have financial implications, but I do not have a figure that I can put on that. But running a process, and particularly in this case, we want to make sure they're independent moderators, etc. That will cost some money, not enormous amounts, but there will be some cost in that process.
Supplementary question.
Absolutely. Thank you for the Minister for his response. I think this is the news, and at least we have clarity that we don't have 7 months extension with Condor Ferry, and we have no ferry beyond March 25. What are the plans that Minister has in place, including timelines, when island and businesses would have certainty from April onwards?
So it is absolutely my intention to work through the new approach to the Jersey-only service. We are intending that we would be able to announce a preferred bidder for that within the next month, and would expect the chosen operator to begin sailing immediately thereafter to allow islanders and visitors to begin booking for the summer season in 2025 and beyond. So we do expect to be able to get both tickets on sale and certainly the ability for tour operators to sell tickets within the next month.
Parliamentary Officer Lawrence.
Just trying to get my head around the situation, sir, as I'm sure members are, and maybe members of the public as well. So if I may just ask the Minister to clarify for me, did he just advise the Assembly that Condor's contract will finish in March, at which time a new contract will be awarded? But at the moment, we don't know who that contract will be awarded to. Is that the current situation, sir? And I'm looking to the Minister. He's agreeing. And he said the new contract will be different. Will he advise us how the new contract will differ to the current one?
There are a number of areas in which the new contract will differ from the current one. Firstly, and I have to say this, is the new contract will have some teeth. The current contract does not really have any ability to keep the operator in line with their commitments in terms of penalising in order to ensure that they remain operating within the operating agreement. That is not, from my perspective, me saying that there have been particular times where that hasn't been held to. I think there may have been, but I do not have them ad hoc. So the ability for the contract to actually hold the contractee to account will be part of this contract. The contract also asks for things such as a flat rate card for freight services, to ensure that we can have proper competition in freight services. The contract also ensures that there is investment in a new decarbonised fleet. That's really very, very important. These are things which are currently not in the existing contract, and there are certain elements of a new contract which are remarkably different to the existing.
Supplemental question?
Yes, the Minister has given us details of how the contract will differ. Are those the only ways in which it will be different? How much information is the Minister able to make public on this new contract?
They are not going to be the only ways, but there are so many ways that this contract is different that it would be a virtually impossible feat of memory to be able to list them in their entirety. The new contract is designed to be an actual contract in which we can hold the operator to account and hold them to the terms of that contract over the coming years. I mentioned fleet investment. The new contract will require fleet investment, and because at the moment we are served by an ageing fleet, that's the reality. And this new contract, by having fleet investment in there, that is one of the reasons why I am so focused on the financial ability of the chosen operator to deliver that investment in the future. Because for our islands to be able to sail with brand new vessels means that we need an operator that is able to finance those brand new vessels. And that is one of the key concerns that I have had throughout this process, that we have a financially resilient operator that is able not just to last 15 years of a contract, but during those 15 years of a contract is able to deliver to these islands brand new vessels that they deserve and that we need in order to be, number one, compliant with carbon reduction, but also to have the vessels that islanders are effectively paying for through their ticket prices. And for me, that element of financial resilience has been at the heart of this difficult time that I really want us to be working with. When we contract for 15 years, I want us to be working with a party that unequivocally can deliver
please,
that 15-year contract with new investment.
I have Deputy Renouf, Connétable St Saviour, Deputy Ozef and Deputy Balash listed to ask questions. I've had to already indicate that's the maximum that I can take at this point to keep on track. So, Deputy Renouf.
Yes, so last week the Chief Minister was sent a furious, I think it was the Chief Minister, was sent a furious letter from the Hospitality Association commenting on the process so far. That letter was particularly focused on the issue of not being able to make bookings beyond March. Has he had any contact with the Hospitality Association with the news that it's looking likely there will at least be another month before there's any clarity on timetables?
And no, sir, I have not. This was information that we received yesterday, and I have not had the opportunity yet to notify anyone. States members are the first to be notified.
Supplemental question, Deputy?
Yes, sir. Can the Minister confirm whether he is speaking to both companies in conjunction with this potential contract extension at the moment?
Sir, it is correct that we continue to be in discussions with both companies.
Well, Connétable St Saviour.
Thank you, sir. A few weeks ago, sir, I did ask the Minister regarding the viability of sharing a mail plane with Guernsey. It's much more viable, improve the service, and it's always better to work together. Does the Minister think it's viable, shipping-wise, to have an operator that comes to Jersey only, which would not only be detrimental to Jersey, but also to Guernsey? Thank you, sir.
Sir, I think it's really important that members understand that a service which is Jersey only would still have inter-island routes. It would not have no inter-island connectivity. And actually, so really, it is only the links to the UK and the links to France that are governed by the contract. It is quite simple, sir, that actually a Jersey-only service would see in many cases, journeys from the UK being faster than they currently are, because they would be able to operate directly to the island, thereby saving time in both freight and passenger journeys. So there is no question, we have asked, and the Jersey only service is absolutely viable. But, sir, I have to come back to my point, that I find it very hard to look. I have to look at financial resilience, sir, and I have to look at the ability for a company to be able to deliver for this island the services and the new vessels that this island requires. That is absolutely viable under a Jersey-only service. There is no question, sir. I just think it is such a shame that I have been placed in the position whereby I have not been given the opportunity to really get to the bottom of that financial viability with regard to one of the parties, because other parties decided to announce decisions before we were in the position to do so.
Supplemental question, Colin Thompson-Saviour.
Thank you, sir. I would concede the point, sir, that the Minister may have been wrong-footed in this recent decision, but we have had several operators running the routes in the past in tandem, which does not always end well. Does the Minister think there's still room for agreement with Guernsey?
Sir, I've always thought there was room to negotiate and to work together. Unfortunately, that opportunity has been largely denied me, sir.
Deputy Joseph.
Sir, I do not underestimate, there's a number of oral questions, so I know in this regard, so maybe you'll be able to deal with timing. I've got a question on the same issue, so I'll ask my question now.
Well, there is you and there is Deputy Balash, and then I'm moving to the next question.
Okay, and there were other questions on the order paper with a similar thing. Yeah, so you'll constrain that time as you wish, sir. So I do not underestimate the issues that the Minister has. The sale of the original Condor was before a competition law which prohibited anti-competitive behaviour or any actions concerning allegations of cartels or monopolies was made. There's been debt leverage and other issues. Is the Minister getting advice about what is the legal and right way to protect the islanders in terms of the cost of living? And I'm particularly wanting to ask about freight rates. Freight rates have remained very high in Jersey for years. It has a knock-on effect of the cost of living. Is he putting this at the front and centre of his considerations in how to deal with what is an inherited large issue?
Sir, freight rates have been front and centre of this invitation to tender. There's no question. That is one of the reasons why we asked for a flat rate card, so that there was entire transparency in that process, and that all islanders would know and understand the cost of freight. A flat rate card, sir, would enable competition in the freight market, which is currently denied. That competition then enables those freight forwarders and logistics companies to deliver higher value-added services and to deliver services in a more competitive way. At the moment, sir, that opportunity is denied the island, so we are denied the potential for competition to play a part in reducing the cost of living, sir. A flat rate card would entirely enable us to do that.
Supplemental question, Deputy.
So I understand the Minister feels somewhat constrained to comment in public on the issues. But he does have parliamentary privilege, and he can speak in forthright terms if he wishes to do so. May I ask, in the light of the report that was provided to this Assembly by Professor Sir John Vickers about regulation, he did say that it was hard, that pragmatism was needed, but the focus on competition and regulation had to be beneficial. Is he able to confirm to the Assembly and all the members of the public that are somehow doubting whether or not this process is going to end well, that he has in his armoury and on advice, the professional advice from expert economists and regulators that will help them make the right decision for Jersey in the longer term? Because it seems to me that there's this forced situation with a cartel between certain parties, potentially between Guernsey and the operator, which is deleteriously affecting Jersey, potentially.
I thank the Deputy for his question. I absolutely do have advice from a wide team. It is difficult before the contract comes into play, whoever has the contract. It is difficult to know exactly how the market will operate, but I do speak with advisors about those matters, and I do think it's very, very important that Jersey has a ferry service that it can rely on. I am really concerned about the idea that we sign up to a ferry service that in just 2 or 3 years' time may require us or may ask for further funding to bail out, as has been given to me in the past 12 months, a direct request for funding to bail a company out. That is what I'm trying to avoid, because to me, that is a significant impact, not just on the cost of living, but on the cost to taxpayers. I also worry about the amount of money in ticket prices that is going off to pay interest rates, off to pay interest instead of being reinvested in the company. These are the reinvested in a fleet. These are the matters that really, really concern me. But the flat rate card will help us get there.
Deputy Baloch.
So did the Minister not appreciate right at the beginning of this melancholy process that Jersey and Guernsey might wish to arrive at different conclusions on the matter? And were there any contingency plans for such an eventuality?
Sir, the actual tender process itself allowed for the islands to come to different views on the matter, and allowed the islands to abandon the process, which is what we have done so in this case. It is not possible for me in this forum to go into detail as to why we have chosen to abandon rather than just make a separate appointment, but that will become clear in time, sir. There is nothing that I have or fear to hide from any action that I have done or taken. I have quite simply tried to avoid Jersey being forced into a position that may not be to Jersey's advantage in terms of trying to get a financially resilient ferry operator for the next 15 years that is able to invest in the new fleet. That is something I want to make sure Jersey can benefit from, and I want to make sure that I and the government of Jersey and states members are not forced into a position where we are not able to make that choice.
Supplemental question, Deputy. Final supplementary, Deputy Guard.
So I assume, and I ask Minister to correct me if my assumption is not correct, that based on what's been said in the public, there are big concern about financial liability of Brittany Condor. The Minister or the Council of Ministers would prefer DFDS. What stop the Minister simply giving the full contract and negotiate contract with DFDS as Guernsey doing and negotiating contract direct with Brittany and Condor? Why we needed to go into the new tender?
So it is really important to treat all parties equally, and that is at the bottom line of procurement process. You have to be fair to all the parties engaged. That is at the heart of why I've not just been able to say one company rather than the other. And it is important that as we move into this new process, we do treat both parties equally. And that is something that I am trying to ensure that we do. That's everything.
Before we come to question 2, the Deputy Coles will ask the Minister for Infrastructure. Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Further to Jersey Electricity's announcement to upgrade the island's electricity network, will the Minister advise what conversations, if any, he has had or plans to have with JE regarding the costs of the required road works and resurfacing of the roads?
Thank you, sir. I thank the Deputy for his question. So, Infrastructure maintains a continuous dialogue with all our utility companies about planned works on our road network in order that we can continue to assess the impact on traffic and road infrastructure. We also publish our own planned highway maintenance for the next 6 years on the government website up to and including 2030. In relation to the JEC's announcement, big upgrade programme, an initial briefing took place in April and meetings have since taken place to ensure the newly resurfaced roads, part of our highway maintenance programmes, are not dug up as a result. In terms of the cost, sir, that will be down to the utility company, sir, not to the government. Thank you.
Supplemental question, Deputy.
Yes, thank you, sir. As there's improvements and upgrades required to our sewage network, some of these areas might coincide. Has that also been given any consideration?
So what we do is there's a monthly call between all utilities, including our drainage team And we also look annually, sir, about what's planned coming forward. So we will continue to discuss not only with the electric company, but also water company and telecoms companies to see where we can share resources. Thank you.
Deputy Joseph.
Thank you, sir. In the context of the previous question and this one, we are asking the Minister to deal with the consequences of a company that is investing in our infrastructure for the long-term viability. And there's been a lot of debate in the United Kingdom and elsewhere about NIMBYism and short-termism versus long-termism. Would the Minister agree that this is a really good initiative by the JEC to improve our our island-wide network for the clean power that we are getting from France? And would he actually balance the issues of roadworks, short-term, but with the long-term issues, and is he doing so?
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir. I welcome the investment of the into the infrastructure by the electric company, sir. And of course, it's not only the government's roads, but also parish byroads. And in fact, I believe parish byroads will be impacted as much, if not more, than the government roads. Thank you.
Supplemental question, Deputy?
No, sir.
Very well. Deputy Alex Curtis.
Thank you, sir. Is the Minister considering any change to the road carriageway resurfacing policies to ensure that sufficient full-width reinstatement of roads occurs when a significant amount of trenching is done, as we've seen a lot of works where actually the resurfacing of trenching is going to cause long-term issues to the quality of certain carriageways?
Thank you, sir. We already have the ability for the full width to be reinstated, sir. We also have the ability to do test holes to call to make sure that the road is being reinstated properly. And there's also a 3-year period where that road is guaranteed, and any repairs done in the 3 years is also carries a 3-year guarantee. Thank you.
Supplemental question, Deputy Curtis.
Thank you, sir. Just to confirm, will the Minister feel comfortable that his department will use, where appropriate, that power they have to request full width reinstatement where it is felt it is justified and appropriate for an operator to do so?
We will, sir.
Final supplementary, Deputy Coles.
No, thank you, sir.
I just remind members that it's never the policy during questions with notice to offer a second supplemental question to any member. We come to question 3. The Deputy Miles will ask of the Chair of the SEB. Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister provide an update on the dispute between the Association of Educational Psychologists and the Government?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. I thank the Deputy for the question. We are working with the National Officer of the Association of Educational Psychologists and the Educational Psychologists to resolve the dispute collaboratively. An independent review of the Educational Psychology Service has been started. The terms of reference for the review have been shared with all parties who are fully engaged with the review. Our priority is to deliver services for children and their families, sir.
Supplemental question?
Thank you, sir. Delays in dealing with grievance matters are becoming a feature for many departments. Indeed, the prison governor expressed similar frustrations in her departure interview. How are the State's Employment Board getting a grip on these matters?
Thank you, sir. This review is going to be carried out at speed. It starts next week and will last for 2 weeks. And a report will be produced into its findings 5 days after the end of that 2-week period. So this particular issue is being dealt with at pace to make sure that the Educational Psychology Service is correct for Jersey and it is properly staffed and that young people are getting their needs served, sir.
Connie Thompson-Lawrence.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister advise how many educational psychologists are actually employed by the government now, and what is the optimal number?
Thank you, sir. My understanding there is currently 4 educational psychologists, although we are having to rely on external consultancy on this matter. The review will make sure that the number of psychologists that we have working is the right size for Jersey. So that will be part of the throughput of this work to make sure that the right staffing is available to make sure that our children are have their educational needs served, sir.
Supplemental question, Conrad?
Yes, sir. If we're waiting for a review to tell us what the exact number is the Minister telling the Assembly that at the moment we're in the position of not knowing how many educational psychologists we should be employing to manage the needs of our young people?
Thank you, sir. I think the review will make all that clear, and that is the point of having the review, to make sure that we have clarity around that question, sir.
Very well. Deputy Captain Curtis.
Thank you, sir. At the moment the CEHA panel first heard of this problem, we arranged a meeting with the representatives of the educational psychologists. We then arranged for a briefing with the Education Minister, which I'm grateful for. The panel continues to follow this up. I believe the matter was first raised about 8 months ago, and seeing as it's such an important issue, can the Minister explain why this matter was not dealt with sooner?
Thank you, sir. The background to this issue has only surfaced fairly recently, has only come across my radar recently. So we did instruct for this review to be taken out at pace as soon as we understood that there was a problem. So beyond that, sir, I don't have any further information.
Supplemental question, Deputy Curtis.
Just if the Minister could confirm that he's only known about this recently, when I believe the grievance was first raised many months ago.
That's correct that the grievance was raised months ago, but the review into the service as a whole has only surfaced recently, sir.
Have Deputy Renouf, then final supplementary. Deputy Renouf.
So Deputy Miles' question was about the wider culture, and I don't feel it was particularly answered. Is the Minister confident that Jersey is meeting best practice in terms of dealing with grievance procedures when they arise, given the number that seem to have risen recently?
I was keeping my answers to the educational psychology service, sir, because that was the ambit of the question. So that's why I answered purely on the service. As for the wider issues, I'm happy to speak to those, sir, and I can confirm that the ex-prison governor, I have asked to meet with her so that I can she can air any issues that she has, I can air them, and I can deal with those issues as they arise. But the thrust of my answer was to stick to the original question, sir.
Supplemental question, Deputy.
Yes, sir, if I may, just following up Deputy Curtis's point, can you clarify that he did not hear about the issues regarding the educational psychologists until recently?
That's correct, sir.
Very well. Final supplementary, Deputy Miles.
Thank you, sir, and I thank the Assistant Minister for his answers, and I have to say I am concerned that a grievance of this nature that was raised in February that has already attracted the interest of the Chief Internal Auditor was not brought to the attention of the State's Employment Board until now. So my final supplementary, really, our education services need highly skilled professionals to support our children, and particularly those who are vulnerable with additional needs. Is the Chair at all concerned that States of Jersey is becoming a less attractive place to work as a result of these unresolved high-profile disputes?
I am concerned about that matter, sir, and this is why we have made sure that this review is carried out at pace, to make sure that we do have the right service for our children's needs.
Very well. We come to question 4. The Deputy General will ask of the Attorney General. Deputy.
Thank you, sir. What are the grounds on which Brittany Ferries or DFDS could take legal action against Jersey given the outcomes of the joint tender process?
Sir, a decision or determination of a public body, which includes a minister, may be susceptible to a claim for judicial review. So the possibility of a decision to abandon or terminate the joint tender process was provided for in paragraphs 3.2 and 10.5 of the invitation to tender document, or ITT, which form the basis of the joint tender process. So in brief, clause 3.2, its relevant parts provided for the avoidance of doubt, the states, which is Jersey and Guernsey, reserve the right to alter the timings at any stage of this procurement process, to withdraw the procurement at any time, terminate the procurement, and where appropriate, to be able to re-advertise, withdraw from the procurement process in its entirety at any time without liability to the bidders which have participated in the process. And paragraph 10.5 provided the states reserve the right not to follow up this ITT in any way and or to cancel the procurement process, and no expense incurred by any person in responding to the ITT will be reimbursed, and neither the states nor their advisors nor any third party will be liable to the bidder. The states reserve the right not to award a contract. So beyond that, it would not be appropriate for me to comment further.
Supplemental question, Deputy General.
Yes, so thank you. Are there precedences in Jersey law where similar procurement challenges have led to compensation or reversal of a decision in the past?
Sir, I'm not aware of any specifically in relation to procurement, but obviously that answer is given off the top of my head without searching all the judgments of the Jersey courts.
Deputy Joseph.
Thank you, sir. I would like to ask the Attorney General, the question is being posed in this Assembly, and there is this convention or reality of parliamentary immunity from prosecution or a civil action, I think. The Minister is, as the Attorney General is being very cautious in what is being actually said. Islanders and members are difficulty because they don't know what's going on. And is there a way that the Attorney General can advise of what is possible to be stated about the negotiations which could lead to which is raising huge concern for islanders, but they don't know, and so there's no confidence in the decision making because of the absence of the ability to say anything. What can be said and can't be said, in short, sir?
So in short, parliamentary privilege is an absolute form of privilege, and it does protect anything that is said or written in relation to the state's procedures, state's debates. However, just because that there is parliamentary privilege does not necessarily mean that it is advisable for a minister or for indeed a backbencher to comment in relation to a live procurement process, because there are sensitivities around negotiations which it is right do not enter the public domain. So beyond that, I can't comment further.
Supplemental question, Deputy Joseph.
I appreciate the spirit in which the Attorney General's answered the question. However, the Minister is trying, as no doubt the legal officers and the Minister's advisors, is dealing with what is known to be a debt pile and a financial unsustainable situation, but it can't be spelt out. Why can't the facts be spelt out in terms that the public can understand and be reassured that the Minister's making the right decisions or not?
So the responsibility is with the Minister. It's obviously not with the public. The public are not the decision makers. The Minister is the decision maker. And I repeat my previous answer, just because parliamentary privilege is an absolute privilege, it doesn't necessarily mean that it is appropriate to spell out the contents of confidential negotiations in a public forum.
I have Deputy Renouf and final supplementary. Deputy Renouf.
Yes, sir. The Attorney General mentioned in his first answer the clauses in the tender document. which appeared to give wide immunity to the government. Is it nevertheless the case that a unhappy, unsuccessful bidder might have legal claim for damages against Jersey were there to be deficiencies alleged within the process of awarding the contract?
I'm simply not going to comment further, as I said in my first answer. These are confidential negotiations, and it doesn't help, frankly, to be asked these sorts of questions in a public forum.
Supplemental question, Deputy Renouf.
Yes, sir, it's an interesting answer. I mean, it doesn't help perhaps for ministers, but I think the public are very, very keen to understand more about what is at risk here. The minister has referred to legal issues. I'm simply trying to find out whether, in principle, it is possible that an unhappy bidder, unsuccessful bidder, might have, in any circumstances, theoretical circumstances, might have a claim against the government for deficiencies within the process.
So, as I said in my previous answer, or my first answer, there is a potential for a claim for judicial review in certain circumstances. The traditional remedies on a claim for judicial review are basically to quash a decision and invite the decision maker to consider the decision again. It is possible, I think, in very rare circumstances for a claim for damages to be made in judicial review, but the circumstances in which that is available are restricted. And beyond that, I'm afraid I simply cannot comment further.
Final supplementary, Deputy John.
Thank you, sir. And I thought it was an interesting answer that Attorney General gave to Deputy Joseph, saying that it was a live tender process. But I would have thought that it wasn't a live tender process anymore, because the joint tender process has been finished because Guernsey decided to not go with a joint tender process. So in fact, the discussion and the questions we've been asking the Attorney General was related to something that now is no longer, because it's not a joint tender process anymore, and therefore ready for analysis and transparency and understanding that particular process, because it is no longer live.
Do you have a
but
question?
My question would be, what are the potential long-term implications for future tender processes, including now, I suppose, the single processes that we and Guernsey are now under in Jersey and I suppose in Guernsey, if Brittany Ferries or DFDS are successful in any challenges that they could bring regarding the now closed joint tender process?
You mean potential legal consequences,
Yes.
long-term consequences, rather
Yes,
than any
sorry.
other long-term consequences?
Yes, legal.
Well, that's quite a broad question. Potential legal consequences. It's rather difficult for me to speculate on that, because that could include, for example, this Assembly passing some legislation in relation to processes for procurement. I think it's an impossible question for me to ask, but in relation to but in relation to the language that I used, I did actually say that it's an ongoing discussion, not an ongoing joint tender process. So the answer that I gave was in relation to the Deputy's original question, and my answer should be read in relation to the Deputy's original question.
We come to question 5. The Deputy Andrews will ask the Minister for Social Security. Deputy Andrews, you'll be answering, yes.
Thank you, sir. Following the integration of trading minimum wage rates into a single baseline minimum wage from 1st of January 2024, will the Assistant Minister advise what consideration, if any, has been given to the reintroduction of a trainee minimum wage rate or youth rate?
Mr. Minister.
Thank you, sir.
The short answer is that there hasn't been active consideration of reintroducing either a trainee minimum wage rate or a youth rate. Both of those things would go against States Assembly decisions, one of which was very recent. There was the decision made when Deputy Andrews himself brought a proposition to harmonise the trainee minimum wage rates. That was adopted by this Assembly. It was adopted with an amendment asking the Minister to do that by order rather than by legislation. So theoretically, the door could still be open in the future to reconsidering a trainee rate if economic circumstances at the time suggested so. But it's probably too soon since that harmonisation to be able to assess any economic impact from that. And in regards to a youth rate, that would have to be changed in legislation because legislation doesn't allow for different rates to be set based on age. And that is down to an amendment to legislation that tried to introduce a youth rate that was brought in 2016. It happened to be me as a backbencher who brought that amendment to stop that from happening, and that amendment was successful. So we don't have a legal basis for setting a youth rate at this point.
Supplemental question, Deputy. Very well, we come to question 6 that Deputy Doublé will ask of the Minister for Children and Families. Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister provide an update on the progress of work on the Children and Civil Status Amendments Jersey Law 2024, which was adopted by the Assembly on the 19th of March 2024, including the consequential amendments and any other work that is necessary to bring the law into force?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Sir, over the summer, work has continued to identify extensive consequential amendments. Officers have now identified 44 pieces of legislation require both minor and extensive levels of amendment. And that's a considerable increase on the numbers that we quoted earlier in the year. The law drafting process for these is at an advanced stage, and I'm hopeful that the consequential amendments will be lodged before the end of the year or very early next year at the latest. Any delay will be as a result of those additional consequential amendments, which of course puts more pressure on the law drafting department. An appointed day act bringing the law into force would follow by mid-2025. Meanwhile, officers are working with various stakeholders on preparatory work necessary to implement the law. A set of revised children's law rules are also in advanced stage of drafting. This is very complex work, but I remain committed to bringing this legislation into force as soon as possible for families who are keenly and patiently waiting. Thank you, sir.
Supplemental question.
I thank the Minister for his answer. I'm delighted to hear that it still seems to be of a high priority. Could the Minister please advise the Assembly if there is going to be a delay in lodging that and it is going to go beyond the end of this year? Could he please inform the Assembly at the earliest convenience and also the families involved and how he would go about informing those families of that, please?
Sir, it would certainly, from my point of view, I would like to see this lodged by the end of the year. But I also do not want to place further pressure on the law drafting department. The numbers over the summer rose from 33 amendments to 44, which is a 25% increase. Clearly, if there is a further delay, we will bring that forward during the, we will advise the Assembly. As regards informing the families, well, I will work with our communications department to find a suitable means of doing that. Thank you.
Very well, we come to the next question. Question 7, the Deputy Porrier will ask the Minister for Justice and Home Affairs. Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister detail what work, if any, is being undertaken or planned to include definition of modern slavery into the government work permit policy and procedures or any related legislations? Thank you.
Minister.
Thank you, sir.
The work permit policy contains reference to the risks of exploitation and the measures that are in place to mitigate these risks and so address issues of modern day slavery. Officers have been working closely with the Home Office on modern day slavery, specifically on immigration matters. I take confidence that their findings that employment law, control of housing and work legislation and immigration work policy have measures similar to those in the UK that mitigate risk of exploitation. However, the work is ongoing.
Supplemental question, Deputy Morel.
Yes, thank you. Does the Minister feels that she has the full support of her officers and the Council of Ministers to do this important work of inserting the modern slavery definition in the work permit policy? That to me is instrumental to make sure that the welfare of migrant workers is protected within the legislation. Thank you.
Minister.
So I'm fully confident that both officers within the department and the Council of Ministers support me in relation to the matter of modern day slavery. In relation to a definition, this is a complicated question to answer. Neither the UK nor the Human Rights Convention tries to set a fixed definition of slavery, which I assume is to allow flexibility in relation to dealing with it. The UK College of Policing describes slavery as the status or condition of a person over whom any or all of the powers attaching the right of ownership are exercised. That is the traditional view of the person being property. That is far more restrictive definition than being required to undertake forced labour, which the Forced Labour Convention defines as all work or services which is exacted from any person under the menace of any penalty and for which they have not offered themselves voluntarily. So in relation to how Jersey works in relation to work permit holders, I would want us to be slightly less restrictive in the way that we look at modern day slavery. And so I would want to see that we are looking closely at all of those work policies, all of those employers and employees and how everything is working together to ensure that we do not ever find ourselves in a position where people feel like they are in modern day slavery.
Deputy Joseph.
Thank you, sir. Like I'm sure other members, I declare an interest in having had previously before in this Assembly, having been involved in applying for work permits, but that's a wider issue. So given the period of time that I was External Relations Minister, I was drawn, my attention was drawn to the International Labour Organization Convention, which the Minister didn't set out as one of the legal issues for her to have regard to. Could she explain whether she has actually asked that the Forced Labour Convention, Article 29, actually, under Protocol 2014, actually is relevant, because I'm concerned and continue to be concerned that there are practices such as charging people for accommodation which is not compliant with the Convention.
Minister.
Sir, I'm not fully aligned as the Deputy is in relation to all of the Convention. However, what I would say is that we do have, I have had concerns, and the reason that the modern day slavery legislation hasn't actually been progressed at this stage was due to the fact that the UK has what they call UK Gangmasters Licensing Act of 2004, which actually for Jersey would be quite difficult to implement due to the level of resources that would be required. So this work needs to continue, and I have instructed officers, both policy and operational departments, to provide me with reassurance that Jersey is looking at all of the matters in relation to modern day slavery. And the Deputy talks about accommodation, and yes, I can fully understand why he thinks that this may be a risk if the person is actually being provided accommodation, and therefore if they work permit is terminated, then they therefore lose their accommodation. This is an ongoing piece of work, which I think Jersey will need to continue working with, sir, into the future, because things change and we need to make sure that at all stages we are ensuring that people that come to work in Jersey are treated properly, fairly and equally.
Supplemental question, Deputy.
I'm grateful for the Minister's response, but may I particularly press her on, is the Minister aware that practices such as unauthorised deductions, not only for accommodation, but from work permit holders' wages for travel and other expenses in other places compliant with the ILO standards, are incompatible? And we're talking about lifting the minimum wage to the living wage, where actually the elephant in the room, if I am correct in my assumptions, is the fact that the minimum wage is not being applied for correctly to migrant workers.
Sir, there's lots of elements to that question. I think in relation to the part that the Deputy talks about, where people are having accommodation deducted without authority, I am not aware of that. There is elements that we raised within our work policy review and our concerns in relation to how tax and social security and other deductions were made, and that all of that information was provided prior to the person taking on a work permit and coming to work in Jersey. I think it is also important from the aspect of what happens before employees come to Jersey. And this was another thing that we were quite concerned about, is that people were being charged a certain amount of money in order to come to Jersey to work. And that is something that we are going to look at. That is something that was highlighted at the time, and it is still, like it is for the Deputy, a concern of mine, because we do not want people to be in debt coming to the island and having to therefore work purely to be able to pay off that debt. When they talk about gangmasters in the UK, this is basically what this is all about, is that it's about the recruitment of people and how they are recruited. And as I said, myself and the Social Security Minister are looking at these elements and whether there's something that we need to do further in relation to recruitment and agencies and how people are actually coming to the island.
So my question was actually about travel,
well,
which the Minister didn't answer.
I'm about to say, I have next Deputy Doublé, Deputy Jonathan, then final supplementary, no others. I was about to remind members, although I did permit the question to come through, that, of course, the questions about the definition of modern-day slavery being introduced into legislation. And I'm conscious that we have stretched broader than that, and I'm going to rein it back. Deputy Doublé.
Thank you, sir. Can the Minister advise whether she has changed any of the ministerial responses and to the scrutiny panel's report in this area, and whether she is, what areas of work she's undertaking, specifically the recommendations around modern slavery and exploitation?
The answer to that is no, sir. I haven't changed any of the responses and to the recommendations. We said we were going to do all the recommendations, and both myself and the Social Security Minister have been doing exactly that.
Supplemental question, Deputy Doublé.
Thank you, sir. Yes, in particular reference to any migrant workers who are experiencing issues around modern slavery and being exploited, where would they be able to go in the island to seek help if they feel they're being exploited?
There is currently a facility at the Social Security at CLS where people can go, and that is going to be revised potentially in the future to another area, as in under the remit of the Assistant Minister, Deputy Alves.
Deputy Jean.
Thank you, sir. When the Minister stood up here in late January asking us to support her as the new Minister for Justice and Home Affairs, one of her main promises was to work on the modern day slavery and do everything that she can related to this area that she had identified as something that was important. to pull through. But yet, when I hear her answer to Deputy Porre's original question about legislation and procedures on what is being planned or undertaken,
Deputy,
I didn't hear very much.
This is a significant comment.
So
and really your purpose is to ask a question.
I will.
And as succinctly as possible, please ask it.
Apologies. So would the Minister be able to explain beyond business as usual what concrete activities she will be doing to progress support around modern day slavery issues within Jersey and any related legislation?
My remit in relation to modern day slavery has not changed. I'm still determined that we will look at what we can do in relation to modern day slavery. As I explained, sir, the issue that we have, that the law in relation to the UK for modern day slavery has a significant impact in relation to the UK's Gang Masters Licensing Act of 2004, which exists to provide protection to a completely different employment environment. And we need to resolve that matter, sir. We need to look at how we can actually, in Jersey, deal with that matter and therefore introduce some form of legislation.
Supplemental question, Deputy.
Yes, please could the Minister provide a timeline in relation to looking at this?
Sir, in relation to this particular piece of legislation, obviously the Deputy will be aware that the priority rests with the violence against women and girls. I would hope, but by the time that this particular government has completed its term of office, that I'll be significantly further forward in relation to modern day slavery.
Final supplementary, Deputy Porrey.
Thank you, sir. Could the Minister please explain how does she intend to protect migrant workers against modern slavery without a definition that is fit for purpose and it is within the legislation? Thank you.
I think, as I've explained, the definition of modern day slavery, sir, it actually implies that somebody is property. And I think the thing is that I think that is quite, to me, a significant thing, and it is also quite difficult to actually prove. And I know that people who've worked with the UK legislation find those difficulties, sir. And so what I would want to do is have something that ensures that Jersey is not at that high level, that we are looking at things closer and more concise so that we can actually deal with them efficiently, as opposed to legislation which only classes somebody as property, because I think it's far more important, sir, that we actually look at it at a lower level.
Well, we come to question 8 that Deputy Renouf will ask of the Chief Minister. Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Will the Chief Minister detail what role, if any, he has and is having in the discussions and decisions being made relating to the new ferry contract?
Thank you, sir. Firstly, as members will know, Deputy Morel, as Minister for Sustainable Economic Development, is responsible politically and legally for this area, sir, and he has my full support in this role. So my own role has related to my capacity as Chief Minister and Chair of the Council of Ministers in supporting the coordination of overall government business. This includes concurrent responsibility for external relations with the Minister for External Relations, given the diplomatic implications of this particular piece of work, sir. I have more recently worked closely with the Minister for Sustainable Economic Development and the Minister for External Relations and other ministers, and sought to support good quality discussions at the Council of Ministers when provided with updates more recently of the tender process and its progress. So as members, I'm sure will appreciate, this decision has potentially wide-ranging and long-term consequences for Jersey, sir. There are financial, economic, logistical, diplomatic, legal ramifications, sir. And as we seek to improve our sea connectivity, it's absolutely vital that we maintain a cross-government approach, sir, work together to find a consensus, sir, keep members and members of the public updated, sir, and seek to find the right solution as soon as possible. Thank you.
Supplemental question, Deputy.
Yes, sir. We've had a joint process for 9 months that has collapsed. There was then an attempt to negotiate separately that led to a stinging letter from the Hospitality Association and a panicky attempt to extend the contract with Condor. Today we learned that that too has collapsed and a new process is underway. What does the Chief Minister have to say to the public who have expressed considerable anger on this and who think that this is an omni-shambles?
So I'd first like to correct the Deputy in his assumptions and just provide what actually has happened as has been outlined by the Minister. The tender process was unable to reach a conclusion, sir, and so that was abandoned in line with the terms and conditions of the process, sir. Following that, the Minister has been quite clear of the way forward, which is to seek further discussion in a new approach with both original bidders, sir, and that is what he has explained to the public on a number of occasions, sir. That is the process we are now following. So he's been more circumspect and I think sensible about giving out too much information in this assembly, notwithstanding, sir, parliamentary privileges. It's simply not sensible or advisable to give too much detail away while we're in the middle of a negotiation, sir. I am very alive to the concerns of the Hospitality Association, sir, although it is worth noting in previous years, as I'm advised, sir, that Condor have published timetables in December. That doesn't necessarily make it right. We need to get a decision made, timetables published, and more assurance for the public as soon as possible, sir, and that's what the Minister and other ministers are working to achieve.
Deputy Gardiner, did you put your light on? I can't... no, you didn't. I sort of must have been saying things. Deputy Joseph.
Sir, the Chief Minister is very aware of this whole issue, having been the Economic Development Minister for 2 terms. Can he explain to the Assembly to what extent he has chaired Council of Ministers meetings about this issue, and would he be prepared to say whether or not he has taken a position on one ferry operator or another? He is in this Assembly, he can speak and he can avoid the unhelpful rumour mill that says that actually he's favoured Condor all the way through. Can he put the record straight?
First part of the question, sir, is in the last month, I think since this became a live situation following Guernsey's announcement, I have chaired 2 council of ministers specifically meetings specifically related to this issue, sir. I can ask, sir, whether the question, part 2 of the question is in order, understanding order 10.10 paragraph 6b, that a question should not seek a particular point of view.
Well, I think you're simply being asked, Chief Minister, whether you favour a particular participant or not. Which is the standing order reference? Do you wish to address?
Standing order 10, paragraph 6, paragraph B, sir.
10. You mean the one at 10.2, which says a question addressed to a member of the States upon a public matter for which the member has an official responsibility must either seek information on the matter or ask for official action with regard to it. That is the section we're looking at.
I don't have the standing order in front of me.
Oh, but is that the
Yes,
section in which you are? I take the view that the Chief Minister does not have to say whether he favours one or another, or whether historically he has favoured one or another. The matter for him choosing to do so or not is not a matter for the standing orders, and it's a matter for his discretion within the answer.
Thank you, sir. So whilst I think it would be unwise to start expressing views on that in the middle of a discussion with operators, sir, I would say, sir, that I feel the Council of Ministers have acted impartially. Both offers have strength and weaknesses, and my preference is simply to find the very best option for Jersey. Thank you.
Very well. Supplemental question.
Thank you, sir. Sir, the concern within the public about this issue, as asked by other members, is enormous. It has massive implications to the economy. I'm asking the Chief Minister about his role and to ensure that he can give confidence in a transparent and open way. He asked a point of order, sir, which you ruled that he could answer it if he wanted to. He is the Chief Minister, and I'm asking him to give confidence that this issue is absolute transparent and proper, and if he was to be questioned in a private session, whether he could answer these questions in a manner which would strengthen public confidence.
So I think I've said I neither favour Brittany Ferries or DFDS in this situation. They're both reliable and reputable shipping companies, both capable, in my opinion, of serving the islands well. We've heard from the Sustainable Economic Development Minister that there are more details to go into around financing, around competition, freight rates, logistics, timetables, diplomatic relationships with our neighbours in Guernsey, in France, logistical issues, depending on when one service was to stop, and the next service to start, economic issues, financial implications around contingency. This is a hugely important decision, and the Minister for Sustainable Economic Development is absolutely right to make sure we have done all of the work, sir. One of the key points of leadership, sir, is centred around decision making, and that is the ability to make a decision properly informed, often under pressure, sir, while considering what's in our very best interest, sir. That's what the Minister is trying to do, sir. That's what the Council of Ministers are trying to do.
I have Deputy Jeune, Deputy IA, and then Deputy Porret. There's no time for further, and in fact, we're running significantly over on this question now. So, Deputy Jeune.
Thank you, sir. Could the Chief Minister advise what discussions he's had with his counterpart in Guernsey from when he became Chief Minister 10 months ago regarding how to ensure the joint tendering process would follow standard procurement procedures and regulations and avoid a process succumbing to favouritism or bias?
I've had no discussions with my counterpart, Chief Minister of Guernsey, particularly in related to the question she's asked. We've talked generally about it, and the last time we spoke, sir, was on a Teams meeting with ministers when Guernsey informed us of their decision and how they were going to announce it.
Supplemental question, Deputy Jeune.
No, thank you, sir.
Deputy IA.
Thank you, sir. Was the Chief Minister made aware of the 7-month contract extension announced by the Economic Minister before it was released to the media, and did the Chief Minister agree with such an approach? Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir, I was aware, and I thought it was a sensible approach. It was a genuine attempt to provide some assurance for next summer, okay, to enable more time for further discussions to be had with both operators. The offer was made with a very best will, sir, purely to provide assistance to the operators, and to allow more time to make a discussion, sir, and get the timetables up so the travelling public could avail to those.
Supplemental question, Deputy IA.
Thank you, sir. Did the Chief Minister know that the Brittany Ferries and Condor had been notified of such an approach before the approach was made? Thank you, sir.
No, sir. I didn't know that, sir.
Very well. Deputy Porret.
Thank you, sir. During those discussions in his role, would the Chief Minister indicate when he knew what Guernsey were opting for Condor and how far behind the public announcement was this?
Sir, Jersey was informed, I believe, at a meeting on Friday. I haven't got my diary in front of me, 17th of October. Jersey was informed that Guernsey intended to make an announcement that afternoon. After discussion, Sir, Guernsey agreed that they would delay that until the following Wednesday, sir, because we'd informed Guernsey that we hadn't taken the matter to the Council of Ministers for review, sir. That was basically how it panned out. Thank you.
Supplemental question, Deputy Morel?
Thank you, sir.
Final supplementary, Deputy Renouf.
Yes, I think looking from outside, this looks like a very chaotic process. I would ask the Chief Minister, what does he have to say to those who take the view that this shows that this is another example of government where the bigger the decision, the greater the indecision?
I think the Deputy, sir, is being opportunist and taking pot shots at the government for political gain, sir, not focusing on supporting the government to come to a decision properly thought through. And I would say to members of the public, sir, that the government is addressing this as a matter of top priority. We deeply regret that we weren't able to come to a joint decision with Guernsey, sir. We deeply regret that we've had to extend the time frame so we can come to the right solution, sir. But I would absolutely stress to members of the public it is important we take the appropriate time to get the decision right, sir, because if we get it wrong, there are serious ramifications.
We come to question 9. The Deputy IA will ask for the Minister for Sustainable and Economic Development. Deputy IA.
Thank you, sir. Further to the publication of the Jersey Gambling Commission Annual Report 2023, will the Minister advise what consideration, if any, has been given to the decline in the number of remote gambling operator licences and advise why the Social Responsibility Fund has remained unused? Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir, and I thank the Deputy for a question on a different subject. The decline in remote gambling operator licences in the past year is a direct result of the acquisition of the Jersey-based businesses by Entain and their transfer to Gibraltar, which is Entain's offshore headquarters. The move is not a reflection of their performance in Jersey, as far as we understand it, and is purely a business decision made by the new parent company for operational reasons. With regard to the Commission's Social Responsibility Fund, it has been building for a number of years, and the Commission's intent was to use that money to fund the delivery by an independent third sector provider to deliver treatment and counselling services. Unfortunately, the board of that external provider took a strategic decision to pull away from its overseas work the same week that the contract was due to be signed, and so the project has been temporarily paused. Nevertheless, the Commission continues to provide support to islanders needing assistance and is liaising with Health and Community Services to see how the Commission can fund educational and promotional material signposting a treatment service being developed within adult mental health.
Supplemental question.
Thank you, sir. Sir, the tiny jurisdiction of Alderney has 26 e-gaming licences, issuing 5 new licences in 2023 alone, reaping 4.4 million in fees. In contrast, Jersey has 4 remote gambling operators, but this will decrease by 2 this year. What action is the Minister going to take to address this governance failure, remembering that the Jersey Gambling Commission not so long ago issued a licence to the disgraced Football Index, which was a Ponzi scheme? Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. I think our island has, over the last 20 years or so, had an interesting relationship with gambling, and certainly we know, I'm sure States members know, Alderney actually moved into the remote gambling space before Jersey did, and in that sense got a head start. So I speak regularly with the Gambling Commission, and I thank them for all their hard work. I think they do a superb job. And one of the things that I think has been difficult for the Gambling Commission is the way they were set up almost asked them to both, in one sense, kind of make Jersey attractive as a place for remote operator licenses, but at the same time they have to regulate, and it's not right to really build onto the regulator any sort of promotional element. I have spoken in the past informally with the Gambling Commission about this, and because I do believe there is room for us to grow our remote operator license business in the island, and so I think it's important though that it is not particularly the regulator that is tasked with that, and so I am looking to understand how we may develop a way of promoting the island as a place for remote operator licenses without compromising the Gambling Commission's integrity, because obviously as the regulator it has to regulate rather than promote. This is a current insight into my own thinking on the matter, because I do think Jersey can be more of a base for remote operator licences than it currently is.
Very well, we come to question 10 that Deputy Joseph will ask of the Minister for Health and Social Services. Deputy.
Sorry, sir, I just got the wrong question. Question 14, I'm sorry, my computer split. Will the Minister state the number of prescriptions of medicinal cannabis to date, indicate the primary conditions for which they have been prescribed, and advise what consequences have been reported, if any, relating to prescribed medicinal cannabis? Apologies for hesitation in answering the question.
Minister.
Sir, I'm afraid I'm only able to report on prescriptions that have actually been dispensed, but I suspect those numbers will be very similar to the numbers of prescriptions that have actually been issued. The most recent audit was published in March of this year and indicated that just under 19,000 prescriptions were dispensed in the period January to September 22, and that suggests an annualised rate of about 25,000 prescriptions. The audit also indicated that around 6% of the island's working age population were in receipt of unlicensed medical cannabis. This is significantly higher than the UK, and their working age population figure is 0.05%. With regard to the primary medical conditions for which cannabis was prescribed, I regret to say that we're not able to gather this information. Only when EMIS, the patient record system, is made available to all cannabis prescribers will this be possible. As for any consequences that might result from the issue of prescriptions for medical cannabis, our own mental health services report anecdotally that there's been an increase in the number of people presenting with acute mental illness who have been using significant amounts of prescribed and or illicit cannabis. I'm also aware that a recent inquest concluded that medical cannabis was likely to have had an adverse effect on the mental health of the person concerned, albeit at an earliest point in time. Sir, I've probably exceeded my 70 words, but I'm very happy to answer any further questions.
You had 2.5 seconds to go, but there we are. Supplemental question.
Sir, I'm very grateful for the Minister's very fulsome answer, and particularly the important reference that he made in the last of mental health issues with very serious consequences. I think that now is not the right time to basically develop these issues because it's a massive issue. Does the Minister agree that there is a potential growing issue which his medical and health department is going to have to deal with following this Assembly's decision to legalise prescription cannabis, and would he agree that it's important that we as an Assembly have full information and he is clear about the negative effects that this decision, well-intentioned although, is having?
Yes, sir, I agree with everything that Deputy Joseph has said to say on the subject. It would appear that we're in a situation where a previous Assembly has gone ahead and legalised medicinal cannabis without having put in place any of the required operating frameworks or necessary legislation to make sure the job is done properly. So we're in a position of playing catch-up, and I can assure the Assembly that we're making a great deal of effort. I sent out an email several days ago which detailed the actions that we're currently undertaking, and we're moving as quickly as we can because I agree we're in a very awkward position, sir. Thank you.
Deputy Jean.
Thank you, sir. And the Minister and Deputy Joseph have touched on questions that I was going to ask about this link with the development of psychosis and mental health issues with those prescribed with medical marijuana. And my question to the Minister would be, is he monitoring the risk of this increased amount of people in Jersey developing these mental health issues?
Well, I think we're monitoring the risk to the greatest extent that we can. The mental health services are acutely aware of the situation. Once we've got EMIS, the patient records running through all the prescribers, they will be able to see the patient records of those concerned and perhaps have a little bit more information about the prescriptions that they're able to issue. So I think that in itself is going to help the situation. So.
Supplemental question, Deputy Jean.
Yes, so, and what support is the Minister developing to put in place for those specifically who've developed mental health issues around those on medical marijuana?
So we're not doing anything specific. As I say, we're mindful of it and we're using all of what you would expect us to do under those circumstances.
Deputy Coles.
Thank you, sir. Can the Minister confirm whether or not the dosage and volume of medicinal cannabis that is prescribed is currently recorded? And if so, if not, will this be something that will be done going forward?
I'm led to believe that's all being recorded by the people who are prescribing at the moment, but that once again doesn't form part of the medical records because they haven't got access to them. That should form part of that once that's all in place, sir.
Supplemental question, Deputy Coles.
Yes, sir. Can the Minister confirm when they hope to achieve the medical records to be shared between the department and private prescribers?
So I'm not able to provide a precise date, but once we've got a clearer idea, I'm very happy to pass that information on to the Deputy, sir.
Final supplementary, Deputy Joseph.
Thank you, sir. I was grateful for the Minister's absolute candour in answering the question. But can I put this into the wider context that the Minister is responsible for both oversight of medicinal cannabis and its prescribing, and also the production of it in large facilities that have huge capacity, whether that be in St John or St Mary's or wherever it is. And can he advise the Assembly and advise me how he is reconciling what he says on the one hand, which is there is undoubted issues arising from prescribing medicinal cannabis, and effectively the island promoting itself as a place to grow this stuff, and seeing all the financial consequences of doing that. He's been to meetings with medicinal cannabis providers, and I just want to understand how he's actually reconciling these two genuinely difficult things.
I'm slightly confused by the question, sir. It strikes me as they're relatively separate. It has to be accepted that the prescribing of medical cannabis is down to the GPs, and that's a professional requirement on their part, and the production of cannabis has to be done in accordance with all of the requirements of the law. And it could well be the case that all of the production that's ever done in Jersey ends up being exported to elsewhere. So it may well be that some of it gets used locally, but I don't really think the two things are necessarily connected. So.
Very well. We come to question 11. That Deputy Ward will ask the Minister for Infrastructure. Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Can the Minister clarify how the service schedule of materials used for each property maintained by Jersey Property Holdings is determined?
Minister.
Thank you, sir, and I thank the Deputy for his question. So, due to the diverse range and complexity of projects undertaken by the Department, the approach to determining material specifications is tailored to the specific risks and complexities associated with each project.
Supplemental question.
Yes, sir. It's been brought to my attention by the manufacturers of a yellow paint recently applied to the steps outside of the Lido of Depart that it is not recommended for use in an environment where the paint is submerged in salt water on a regular basis. I understand that this specification is written by a London-based consultancy firm whom in the written answer to WQ 405, the Minister described as having extensive experience in building, surveying, conditions assessments, defect analysis, remedial actions, etc. Can the Minister advise who determined that this was an appropriate paint and how Jersey Property Holdings intend to rectify the situation? And does the Minister think his department are getting value for money from this organisation, given his comments that, and I quote, it was a conscious decision to seek best value for the taxpayer?
Sir, with respect, sir, I can't be expected to know what type of paint is being used on each property, sir. The fact that the Deputy's brought this to my attention, sir, I'm happy to take that away. The answer to the written question, sir, was based on factual information. It's a reputable company, sir. If they've made an error, I shall seek that out, sir, and I'll come back to the Deputy and members. Thank you.
Very much. Very well. We come to question 12. The Deputy Wilson will ask of the Chair of the States Employment Board. Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Will the Chair detail the rationale for moving the December pay date for States employees from mid-December to the end of the month, and advise how this change aligns to the Government's commitment to supporting islanders amidst a cost of living challenge during a period traditionally associated with increased expenses?
Minister.
Thank you, sir, and I thank the Deputy for the question. It's important to emphasise that the request initially came from unions and employees who were informed at the start of this year of the changes, and we have sent update reminders throughout the year to ensure employees are fully aware. Public servants were first advised of the change on the 1st of February 2024. Prior to this, the unions and employment relations were in discussions to facilitate the change request. Further communications have been sent as reminders. We have placed reminders on pay slips to all public servants. We have provided manager updates to remind staff of this change, and we have arranged for November pay slips to confirm that if anyone is in financial hardship as a result of this change, to please contact reward@gov.je before the 6th of December, and we'll be able to pay early, probably around the 18th of December. This will be communicated in a subsequent manager update to all staff to remind them that if they want to get paid early, they can do that on time. So.
Supplemental question, Deputy.
Thank you, sir, and I thank the Deputy for his response. We still haven't heard the reason for why the unions requested it, and I wondered if the Deputy could elaborate on that, please.
Yes, sir. When it comes to budgeting, employees like to be paid regular pay at regular time intervals. And whilst I think historically people were paid early for Christmas, the flip side of that, or the downside, is it becomes 7 weeks till the next pay date. So anyone who is actually on a tight budget finds it harder to budget when there is such a stretch into January to wait for the next pay date. And of course, you know, there is a pre-Christmas spend, but there's also a post-Christmas spend, January sales and the like, sir.
Very well. Conor Saviour.
Thank you, sir. In times past, sir, most people had a little put by for the Christmas period, but sadly now people are living paycheck to paycheck. But does the Minister not feel that it should be paid earlier as normal so that people can buy their families presents and give their families the Christmas lunch they all deserve? Thanks, sir.
Thank you, sir, and I thank my Conatab for that question. As I stated earlier, anyone who wants or needs to be paid earlier and is a public servant can apply for that separately. So if any employee genuinely feels that it's going to affect their Christmas, then there is a mechanism to allow that. And of course, as States members, we are part of that same process. So I would extend that invitation to anyone of our number who feels that they want to get paid early to contact the Chief People Officer who can put that in place for them. Thank you, sir.
Supplemental question, Conor. Deputy Coles.
Thank you, sir. And I'd like to thank the Assistant Chair of SEB for working with the unions to bring this forward. As somebody who campaigned for this with my previous employment, being paid this later date would have been very satisfactory for me. The one concern I do have, and I hope the member can confirm, that all processes have been checked to ensure that people are still paid on time due to the continuous bank holidays we get through December, and obviously these can sometimes put a slight delay on payments, but just want to ensure that everybody gets paid on time.
Yes, sir. The actual pay date will be the 31st of December, which is a working day, so it will land in people's accounts as usual.
Supplemental question, please. Well, Deputy Joseph.
Sir, I wonder whether I don't envy the position of the Deputy Chair, but does he understand the message that is being sent out? It's, okay, you can get paid early, but you've got to tell us you've got financial problems. Does he not recognise, and does those that he serves within on the State's Employment Board and the officials recognise that there is a cost of living crisis? As the previous question has said, people are living paycheck to paycheck, and that there is a hidden likely number of people in this island who civil servants, etc., who are going to simply be struggling over a period of festivity that otherwise will simply. Does he not understand any compassion and feeling for the impact that this is having and just relying on what a technocratic issue of revealing confidential information?
Thank you, sir. I thank the Deputy for that question. I completely understand people who are struggling financially, sir. In my previous role, I dealt with people who are struggling financially on a daily basis. And that's why we have put in place a mechanism to allow anyone, whether they're struggling financially or not, to be paid early if they so wish. But I just refer back to my previous answer where very often, in my experience, people struggle financially more in January than they do in December. And having to wait 7 weeks for the next pay date, for most people, causes more hardship than actually being paid early. Thank you, sir.
Supplemental question, Deputy.
The Vice Chair has said that some new information, which he can reconfirm again very briefly, is that previously it was if you had financial issues you could ask to be paid early. That meant the confidentiality was broken. He said, and can he restate and confirm for the avoidance of any doubt, simply an email from any member of staff says that they'd like to be paid earlier will suffice for an early payment. Is that the case?
That's correct, sir.
Final supplementary, Deputy Wilson.
Thank you, sir. I would ask if the Minister would consider just evaluating the effect of this given the change and if he could give us some indication as to whether or not that would be something that the States Employment Board would be interested to evaluate. Thank you.
Yes, sir. I thank the Deputy for that question. It is indeed. Whenever there's a change made, there's always going to be winners and losers, and there's always going to be people that benefit from it and people that prefer the way it was. So I will commit to undertaking a review in January of how that process has worked. So.
Right, yes, we come now to question 13. The Deputy Renouf will ask for the Minister for the Environment. Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Further to the adoption of P82/2023, will the Minister update the Assembly on the policy and legislation required to move forward with building a wind farm in Jersey's waters?
Thank you, sir. Sir, I want to tell the Deputy and the Assembly that I remain committed to this important work. I will be bringing both the primary legislation and a proposition on the leasing of the seabed to this Assembly for debate within this term of government. During the in-principle debate earlier this year, there were a large number of questions from States members that need to be resolved in order for us all to make an informed decision about the wind farm. My officers are now in the process of more detailed work to investigate these issues so that when I return here for further debate, we can all make the most informed decision. Thank you, sir.
Supplemental question, Deputy.
Yes, sir. What discussions has the Minister or his colleagues had with Guernsey, the UK and France regarding such issues as potential market access and other related matters?
Thank you, sir. I can tell the Assembly that only last week, at the beginning of last week, I think it was, I spent 2 days in Guernsey discussing climate impact and also wind farms. And in those discussions were also officers from the Isle of Man. We're in regular discussions with both Guernsey and the Isle of Man about these issues. I know the Minister sitting alongside me met up with the UK Government Minister in New York recently, where he discussed wind farms. And certainly I can tell the Assembly that my team and I are in regular contact with colleagues in France, including the Regional Department for the Environment, Planning and Housing, the 2 préfets from Normandy and Brittany, the Parliament of the Sea and French ministers. The issue or the subject of projects for wind farms is of great importance to France. They have huge aspirations for more offshore wind around us in the Bay of the Seine, in the Bay of Granville, and they're taking great interest. But certainly I had just want to go back to the discussions I had with Guernsey recently, which was very very good and fruitful, and Guernsey too are moving forward with their own plans.
Very well, we come to question 14, Deputy Andrews will ask of the Minister for Treasury and Resources. Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister advise what communication, if any, she has had with her counterparts in Guernsey or the Isle of Man in relation to updating or amending the island's 010 tax system, and if none, why is that the case?
Thank you, sir. So I have confirmed a few times previously that I have no plans to change Jersey's 010 corporate income tax regime. Jersey has an ongoing dialogue with the other Crown dependencies, including on tax matters. However, I have not had any discussions or communications with them about changing Jersey's 010 regime. This is not something I'm contemplating. Nor is it something that is included in the proposed budget 2025, which is due to be debated later this month. On a separate note from 010, members will remember that the Pillar 2 regime was unanimously adopted by the States Assembly last month. Those entities which are not impacted by Pillar 2, which are the vast majority of our companies, will remain in the 010 regime. Pillar 2 affects a relatively small number of large multinational enterprises operating in Jersey. In 2025, these entities will pay a corporate income tax of 15% in line with the OECD's Global Minimum Tax Framework. This is a positive step for Jersey and maintains Jersey's reputation as being fully aligned with international tax standards. Thank you, sir.
Supplemental question.
Yes, please, sir. Does the Minister believe it to be fair that we have businesses in this island who pay zero tax when we have middle earners in Jersey who are paying a marginal income tax rate of 26%?
So the island's corporate income tax regime is built on the pillars of tax neutrality and transparency. It meets international standards on taxation and has served this island well, allowing our financial services sector to flourish and provides employment for thousands of people. The proposed budget forecasts the corporate tax regime to contribute $221 million in tax revenue for 2025, so it is vital that the measures we take do not impinge on the performance of the corporate sector. Thank you, sir.
Deputy Joseph.
Sir, I arise to ask a question to reassure the member that's asking this that she is still of the view that a very challenging decision to introduce 010, which had deleterious consequences in the short term, but had massive advantages by maintaining our finance industry and our competitiveness, that this Assembly dealt with, and she would, given the benefit of hindsight in this regard, whilst difficult, the 010 issue was imposed upon us by the European code compliance, and would she agree that actually it is meant that Jersey's economy is as strong as it is today compared to other places that are seeing deficits and having to introduce GST late?
Yes, sir, I do agree with the Deputy, and I thank him for his question. As I've just said, 010 has served the island well, and it means we have a thriving financial services sector which is continuing to compete in an increasingly competitive market. And we will continue, it is important that we continue our work to ensure both that Jersey remains competitive as an international finance centre, and the work being led by my colleague Deputy Gorst following the introduction of Pillar 2 will very much focus on ensuring competitiveness and indeed building growth in our economy. Thank you.
Supplemental question. Final supplementary, Deputy Andrews. Well, we come to question 15. That Deputy Joseph will ask the Minister for Sustainable Economic Development. Deputy.
So I think in the interest of time, having this question already ventilated, it's the same version of a different result. So with the Minister's permission and your Assembly's permission, I think I'll withdraw it.
Yes, I'll consider
We've already answered it, unless the Minister, if I want to pose it, the Minister wants to say anything else. But we really ventilated this quite a bit.
Come then to question 16. Thank you very much, Deputy. Indeed. We come to question 16. The Deputy Doublé will ask for the Minister for Justice and Home Affairs. Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister please provide an update on the progress, if any, on updating the draft crime, prejudice and public disorder law, including any consultation and discussions with key stakeholders?
Minister.
Sir, as the Deputy will know from the Crime, Prejudice and Public Order Jersey was divided into two sections, one dealing with public order components and the other with the issue of hate crime. The public order section was brought to the Assembly as the draft Crime Public Order Jersey law, which has recently come into force. The hate crime elements of the law are being developed into a standalone law, which will be brought to the Assembly in 2025. Some key questions for stakeholders will concern the scope of the intended protected characteristics and the terms of the intended offences. An effective consultation on those points require that a draft of the legislation be available for discussion. Therefore, I will be consulting on the details of the legislation in 2025.
Supplemental question, Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Could the Minister please give some further detail on the exact timings of 2025? Which quarter of that year would it be?
So at this stage, I cannot give exactly which quarter it will be. There has been some delays in relation to unforeseen circumstances, and the person dealing with this particular piece of legislation has another large piece of legislation which is coming to fruition, and so I can't be exact. I would like it to be expedited as quickly as possible, but I would not want to say that it would be the first or second quarter and then find myself in a position where I couldn't deliver on that.
Very well. Yes, Deputy Gardner.
Can the Minister confirm if it will come and be launched in 2025?
So that's an affirmative. I'm confident that it can be done and lodged in 2025.
Supplemental, Deputy Gardner. Deputy Miles.
Thank you, sir. Can the Minister tell the Assembly whether misogyny is going to be included in this particular piece of legislation?
Sir, in relation to the misogyny part of it, I have recently spoken to the conveyor of the Delegated Powers and the Law Reform Committee of the Scottish Parliament about the treatment of misogyny in Scotland, and I will be speaking to that person again in relation to this issue, and so whether it will be standalone or form part of the hate crime, I'm having that discussion and I will continue that discussion, sir.
Yes, supplemental question, Deputy.
Is the Minister prepared to give her view whether she thinks misogyny should or should not be included in the legislation?
I think, sir, that moving forward, I think it should be considered as part of a legislation, whether that is separate or within the hate crime, sir.
Final supplementary, Deputy Dublin.
Thank you, sir. What other actions can the Minister take, or would the Minister consider taking short of or in the meantime? For example, would she consider asking the police to record crimes motivated by hatred of women in the same way that they record data on crimes motivated by hatred of other protected characteristics? And also, would she consider actions along the lines of the Labour government in addressing incel culture that might be present, especially around social media use on the island?
Simple answer to that question, sir, is yes, I'm happy to speak to the States of Jersey Police to see what we can do in the interim time before this legislation is implemented.
Very well, we come down to question 17 that the Deputy Coles will ask of the Minister for Sustainable Economic Development. Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister state the cost, including the cost of any standby vessel, that will be incurred by government in extending the provision of the ferry service from Condor for 7 months?
Sir, as I mentioned earlier, Condor have declined that offer of 7 months, but had they agreed, in itself, there is no funding involved in supporting the delivery of the operating agreement, and what we were suggesting was just an extension of the existing operating agreement. So there would not have been any direct cost implications in that respect. With regard to the existing contingency arrangements, we would have had to make a call. The existing contingency arrangements for freight are in place until the end of December this year, and certainly we would we have to, and we would have had to, had the 7-month agreement been taken up, decide then as to whether or not to continue to maintain that freight contingency. No decision had been made around that at this point.
Well, supplemental question.
Thank you, sir. Is the Minister able to confirm that as part of the procurement of any future ferry service, that this standby vessel will no longer be funded by government?
Sir, my entire stance in this matter, certainly since I was informed of a decision by Guernsey, has been to ensure that Jersey is in a position where it does not have to fork out money, that's poor language, so does not have to spend money on either contingency vessels or on future bailouts, or be denied the opportunity to have fleet investment, which gives us a fleet that we can be proud of for the island in the future. So there's no question in my mind that any future contract that we enter into would be would deliver us a service whereby we do not need to maintain contingency vessels. If we did need to maintain contingency vessels, then I would suggest it was not a contract that we should enter into.
Deputy Gardner.
Thank you, sir. Can the Minister explain what led to the decision to set up that arrangement? What was the trigger?
Sir, and I believe this has been reported in the media. So last December, I received a request from, I believe it was shareholders of the ferry company concerned, quite simply for £40 million, sir, to ensure that they could continue operating the services. And of that £40 million, £10 million was apparently urgent. This followed a previous request for a guarantee of £80 million to underwrite the services. These requests led me to believe that, number one, I did not think that a £40 million investment in a company that effectively was telling us was on the edge would have been an effective way to secure our ferry services. And as a result, I took the decision that we should look for a contingency arrangement to ensure that should the demise of that ferry company occur, that we had contingency to ensure that food and medicines could be delivered to this island on an ongoing and continual basis, because those lifeline freight services are, as I've said before, the very food that we eat, sir. And it was those requests that sent myself off. And I have to say I'm very grateful. It wasn't just I who went out looking for contingency arrangements. I was accompanied by, I will say this, he wasn't in government at the time, Deputy Luce, because I knew he had a large understanding of maritime matters, etc. And I also felt that it was appropriate, Deputy Luce was in scrutiny at the time, but not on the panel that scrutinised me, that it was appropriate that the Assembly could be afforded the comfort of knowing that it was not I just acting alone in that matter, that there were other eyes saying, no, this is the right thing to do. So, sir, that's a very brief explanation of what happened last December, sir.
Indeed, supplemental question, Deputy.
Yes, thank you, sir. Just to make sure that I understand correct, that these measures were put in place in case to protect the island, in case the condor is going to bust, an island will be protected. Is my understanding correct?
That is correct, sir.
Deputy Renouf.
Yes, sir. The Minister said that the arrangement runs out at the end of December. The current contract with Condor runs till the end of March. Will the contract to provide standby vessels be continued till the end of March? And if he is looking to do that, will he be looking to share it with Guernsey as he has currently been doing?
So it is important the Deputy does put his finger on an important point. The current costs of those contingency arrangements are shared on a 50-50 basis with Guernsey. Because we have not made a decision on and we haven't yet discussed the continuation of those contingency services, I don't know Guernsey's position on that, because quite simply we haven't yet asked. But I think it is really important, sir, that the Assembly understands that one of the things of going through this ferry procurement process was that it is quite possible that Condor may not win the contract. And so I did write to the company and the board of the company as recently as 23rd of September on precisely this point, asking for certainty around their ability to continue the contract up to the end of March, as their contract currently says, the operating agreement currently says. And I was asking, are they able, in the event that they do not win the contract, are they able to continue providing those services? So the response at the time effectively asked for money to guarantee the continuation of those services, and effectively asked for a sum of many millions of pounds to continue those services till the end of March. That is another matter in my mind, because they are currently contracted to continue those services, yet I was being told that they would require payment, or may require payment, in order to do so.
Supplemental question.
Yes, sir. He's talked about the Condor contract. He has a contract with a provider of a lifeline service on standby. Is he able to say whether he has opened negotiations with that company about continuing to provide that service, given the extreme vulnerability that he seems to be hinting at in terms of the service from Condor? And can he say who that contract is with, and if he has explored other options in case that contract might not be able to be extended with the current provider of that backup service?
Thank you, sir. I'm happy to say that the FDS are the provider of those contingency services through a contractual basis. They have chartered 2 vessels which remain on 48-hour cool-down standby to the islands in the event that they are needed. So far, so we have had to extend this, I believe, 3 times. Please forgive me if I've not got that exactly right, but about 3 times we've had to extend it so far. There has been no problem in maintaining the continuation of those services, and should we desire to continue the contingency arrangements, I have no reason to doubt that we would be able to do so, as long as we give appropriate notice on our desire to continue that. The market for chartering vessels is constant, and so if we choose not to continue with the contingency arrangement, those vessels will, I am sure, be chartered by other companies or jurisdictions or other parties. And so it is important, as long as we give the notice the appropriate amount of time, I have no reason to believe that there will be any difficulty in securing those charter vessels for a longer period.
Final supplementary, Deputy Coles.
Thank you, sir. And I'm sure the Minister will be glad that this is probably the last question he's going to have to answer on ferries today. So the Minister made reference to investment in vessels within his the answers to one of these questions. Can the Minister just confirm that this will be investment by the companies alone, or whether government will be involved in investment in new vessels?
That's a very interesting question, sir, and it has been of my opinion that absolutely this is about the companies investing in vessels themselves. In fact, I was disappointed at one point in the past where it was suggested that government should be investing in those vessels as well, and I've made it very clear that no, the routes themselves enable profit to be made, and that profit should be reinvested in vessels. And it is, islanders who pay through their ticket prices, who pay through logistics firms that book freight onto boats, that pay for that investment into the future. And the idea that government should in some way pay for that investment, I think, is unnecessary. And in fact, the models I've seen about future fleet investment show that it is unnecessary.
Very well, we come to question 18. The Deputy Porrier will ask the Minister for Justice and Home Affairs. Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister detail what progress, if any, is being made in updating the island's work permit policy, and explain why the publication of a new policy has been delayed? Thank you.
Minister.
Thank you, sir. I had hoped to have the updates to the work permit policy published in August. However, after the briefing, the Housing and Work Advisory Group, it was requested that further consideration was given to certain elements. This has taken longer than expected, and I hope that the updated policy will be published in the coming weeks.
Supplemental question, Deputy.
Not at this stage, thank you, sir.
Very well, that brings question, Deputy Curtis, yes?
My apologies, sir, I was preempted on the light.
Very well. That brings questions to ministers with notice to an end. We move to questions without notice. There's also an urgent oral question to follow on after that. But the first period of questions is for the Minister for Health and Social Services. Deputy Gardner. Deputy Gardner.
Yes, thank you, sir. I was first. Would the Minister advise if he is looking into the option to move more services into the community as it was suggested previously?
Yes, Minister.
So, apologies, I appear to be a little confused. Moving services into the community, I'm not entirely sure.
I can clarify, yeah. The UK government has made the shift in healthcare from hospital to communities as a central part of the mission to improve healthcare and lower the cost. We did have these discussions about moving more services from the hospital healthcare to the community during the previous term and Jersey care model. Would the Minister agree with this approach?
In a word, not entirely. So I think there's a balance to be struck. We are building an expensive new hospital. It makes perfect sense to keep people in hospital for as long as they need to be in hospital. And at the same time, I know that over the course of the longer term, we're going to be looking at helping to improve care in the community as well. And I think that we need to take a balanced approach to those two things, sir.
Supplemental question, Deputy Gardner.
Absolutely. Thank you, Minister, for the question and to the answer. As we all know that we have 30 beds block in the hospital, and definitely care in the hospital is more expensive than the proper care in the community. What Minister putting in place that the successful transition from the hospital when patient is ready to the community will be in place and will avoid bed blocking in the future?
It's not always entirely clear about the difference in cost, depending on the level of care. So we have to bear that in mind. We do have I think it's 30 or 32, what you might, I don't like to use the term bed blockers, but that's what we have at the moment. We're in a very, very difficult situation that we're using all the beds that are currently available. So we're just having to fine-tune things until we get more beds actually constructed. And that's not really going to happen until such time as the new hospital is built. Hopefully that'll be completed at the end of 2028 or very early in 2029. So really we're just in the difficult position at the moment of having to do the best we can with the facilities that we've got. So.
Deputy Kovacs.
Thank you, sir. Complaints and learning from mistakes is a key form of progress. Can the Minister confirm the best method to raise issues and complaints with the Health Service?
I don't know if it's my hearing, sir, but I just missed the end of that question as well. So if the Deputy could repeat the last part of the question.
Certainly, sir. Can the Minister confirm the best method to raise complaints and issues within the Health Service?
Yes, sir. I do know that complaints service works because my inbox is full of them. Yeah, there are two methods. You can go onto the government website. There's a route through there, and you can go direct to the PALS, the Patient Liaison Service at the hospital. And I have to say they do, for this since they do a very good job, sir. So those are the two routes.
Can the Minister... Sorry, thank you.
Yes, well, that's fine.
Will the Minister confirm how regularly there's a review panel that goes in, looks at the complaints and discusses lessons learned?
I've been caught off guard there. I can't answer that question off the balls of my feet, but I'm certainly happy to let the Deputy know, so hopefully later today. So.
Deputy Alex Curtis.
Thank you, sir. Has the Minister considered creating separate heads of expenditure for the separate sites within the new healthcare facilities programme?
No, sir.
Supplemental question, Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Yes, the topic of separate heads of expenditures and the transparent declaration of funding was covered in the JEP today, with the editor making note that, following the need to ensure value for money, I quote, "The picture will change once a builder has been chosen and the project gets underway. At that point, it is essential that islanders are able to gauge the process and the cost and make an informed and accurate assessment of how things are going. Following that, if not now, when does the Minister believe it is appropriate to create and provide separate heads of expenditure to deliver that balance?"
Well, sir, we're going to be working on 3 principal sites. I don't think there'll be a time when it's ever completely appropriate to have separate heads of expenditure. What I have committed to all along is to divulge as much information, financial information, as I possibly can, as soon as I possibly can, without jeopardising our ability to get the best value for money for the taxpayer. I've made that position clear throughout, and I maintain that position going forward, sir.
Well, Deputy Renouf.
Yes, sir. The previous Our Hospital project proposed a health estate of under 70,000 square metres. According to the government's feasibility study, the proposed new health estate, Overdale, Kensington Place, Enid Kenno and St Saviour, will be over 100,000 square metres, which is a 50% increase. What effect does the Minister think this increase in the health estate will have on running costs?
Very difficult to tell, sir. I wish I could be more forthcoming. What we are going to be doing, I fully appreciate that separating inpatient and outpatient care will introduce some cost increases, but we have to bear in mind that it will probably introduce considerable efficiency savings. I have to say that when the acute section moves out of the Kensington Place Gloucester Street block, we'll be left with a considerable site, and we're currently reviewing the entire health estate to see if it can be rationalised to the extent that much of it can be moved onto that site. That'll free up a lot of old property at various parts of the town and provide us with a new and efficient unit in the centre of town. So I think collectively the quality of care that can be delivered from the 3 premises once they're finished will be hopefully exemplary. Some extra costs will be incurred, some savings will be made, sir.
Well, supplemental question, Deputy.
Yes, so the Minister has previously identified unavoidable pressures on future health spending, including more expensive treatments, greater longevity and the cost of care, buying care in the UK. Why is he adding to those unavoidable spending pressures with an avoidable increase in operating costs caused by a vastly increased health estate?
I simply don't agree with the statement.
Deputy Joseph.
Thank you, sir. Since my return to public duties and following my own ill health, I've been out and about in St Saviour asking people what their concerns are. And I am a teetotaler at the moment, and I don't smoke cannabis or use it. So I can't be stoned or drunk, but I have been shocked by the feedback I'm getting from constituents about the complete inexplicable situation with regard to medicinal cannabis prescriptions on the one side, and the island promoting itself as a medicinal cannabis grower at large, which is going to be a huge economic implication. Would the Minister be candid with the Assembly and say whether or not he thinks that the decisions of this Assembly made previously are now coming out into a real nightmare situation that is getting worse and worse and growing? And I don't underestimate it. This isn't a joke. This is deadly serious. But is it not a nightmare, sir?
I can imagine the headlines when, if I stand up and say that I agree that it's a nightmare. What I will say is I would accept that we're in a difficult position. Decisions have been made without sufficient forethought, and I think we're paying the price for that now. What I have tried to do is set out the work that's taking place to address all of those issues. I did send an email out several days ago detailing those actions, and we're moving as quickly as we possibly can. Unfortunately, there's nothing else we can do other than seek to put right the position that was created for us by previous assemblies, sir. But I do thank the Deputy for raising the issue because it is a serious issue.
Yes. Sorry.
Thank you, sir.
Supplementary question.
I apologise for the Minister to having to ask this, but given, and I do not wish to be regarded as a dramatic, an overly dramatic issue, but he is dealing with a massive situation at health. And this is a self-imposed one that's been imposed by this Assembly. Knowing what he now knows, do we need to bring a rescindment motion on the two issues that are growing cannabis for export and prescribing medicinal cannabis and put that on hold whilst he can get on with the important things that actually he needs to get on with?
No, sir, I think I have to part company on this. You cannot, as an island, promote an industry, encourage people to invest in it, and you cannot put businesses on hold. That simply doesn't happen. What we have to do is rather hastily introduce the legislation that's required to facilitate those businesses. And as for the use of cannabis, I want to try and be a little bit more positive. I was just going through the room on the side, and I was reminded by a deputy that we do have to bear in mind that medical cannabis does provide a lot of relief for a good number of people. So I think we have to look on the positive side as well. So whilst there are difficulties to overcome, we have to be mindful of the fact that there are benefits being enjoyed by a number of people. So we have to put those things in balance. So.
Deputy Jean.
Thank you, sir. Clearly, there's a different paradigm that could be pursued between community-based healthcare, which the UK is now pursuing, versus a hospital-based approach the Minister is pursuing. What evidence base has the Minister used to form his thinking, especially when he just answered earlier that he stated that a 50% increase in the hospital estate won't lead to increased running costs? And will he share that evidence with the Assembly?
Once again, I think we have to be careful about the accuracy of questions. Yes, there might be a 50% increase in the health estate, but there'll be a certain degree of rationalisation as well. You also have to bear in mind that modern facilities require more space per individual patient. We're going to be providing single rooms for people rather than wards of 6. So there's an improvement in the quality of care. Giving somebody more room in which to exist and to which to spend their time doesn't necessarily of itself produce a cost increase. So I think we've got to be a little bit careful when we're asking these questions, not to be too simplistic.
So my question was about evidence and the paradigms between community-based care and hospital-based care.
Yes, your answer was criticising the question but not actually answering it, Minister. So,
fair comment. Evidence-based. Well, I'm surrounded by professional people who carry with them a great deal of experience. The team that are managing the hospital, the lady that's actually the project leader was the deputy project leader on the last hospital project. So I have available to me a great deal of experience from people with a good deal of knowledge. So that's the way I work. I'm very impressed with the team of people that I've been working with, and I've no reason to suspect that the advice that I've been given from them is in any way at fault. So.
Supplemental question, Deputy.
Thank you, sir. I was wondering if the Minister, beyond the specific people who have, as you said, professional advice, but usually there is wider evidence based on research that's done through academic research or the wider discussions around the health community as such, beyond Jersey, in this discussion between these two paradigms. And I was wondering if he has looked at those and if he could share that evidence based with us, why Jersey is choosing to go to hospital-based rather than a community-based approach.
Well, as I suggested in one of my earlier answers, we're doing a combination of both. We've decided upon a hospital some time ago, and we're going to continue with that. I would also say that the experienced people with which I'm working at the moment have also got access to an awful lot of people from elsewhere and an awful lot of information from elsewhere, and I know that they have been in consultation very widely over the course of both the last project and of this one. So we actually started this project with a lot of previously collated information from various sources.
Well, Deputy Dublé.
Thank you, sir. The Health Advisory Board recently identified an additional £5 million worth of funding pressures within the Health Department. Can the Minister explain how these pressures will be met?
We're hoping not to go to the full 5. We're making every effort that we can, short of closing boards and theatres, which I don't think anybody in the Assembly would appreciate us doing. And I have to say we're in constant contact with the Treasury as things develop, sir.
Still only 15 seconds left.
Will the Minister be seeking extra funding from the Treasury Minister?
That could be the case, sir.
Very well. That brings the question time for this Minister to an end. The next question period is for the Minister for International Development. Does any member have any questions? Deputy Catherine Curtis.
Thank you, sir. I understand that Jersey Overseas Aid has previously made grants to United Nations organisations towards preventing famine in Gaza. Can the Minister explain whether Israel's move to ban UNRWA, the United Nations Relief and Works Agency, will prevent any further aid getting into Gaza?
Thank you. I thank the Deputy for her question. Jersey Overseas Aid has in the past not directly contributed to UNRWA. However, we have contributed to other NGOs in the area, OCHA, International Health Partners, and the World Food Programme. But undoubtedly, and has been recognised by the UN Secretary Council President, that UNRWA was the backbone for the aid in Gaza at this time. So it undoubtedly is going to have a very detrimental effect to the aid getting in. However, if I could just put this into context, before the events of October the 7th last year, there were 500 trucks of humanitarian aid getting into Gaza. Now there are 28. And it's been recognised that we are now witnessing a famine on the shores of the Mediterranean in 2024. That's not food insecurity, but a famine. So yes, it will have a detrimental effect, but aid will hopefully still be getting in.
Supplemental question, Deputy.
Thank you, sir. Just will the Minister be able to update us on any improvements, any progress that can be made around this?
I certainly will, and as the good Deputy has visited the offices of Jersey Overseas Aid, I would welcome any member who wants to come in and find out more about what we do and the details of any projects. We're more than happy to share that with them.
Deputy Renouf.
Yes, sir. I was pleased to see a display of some anger, I think, on the part of the Minister in relation to the situation in Gaza. Can she say whether Jersey has any intention to currently try and provide aid into Gaza through the various routes that she has mentioned?
Indeed, and that's what I alluded to in Deputy Kirst's question. We have been providing aid in Gaza. In fact, since the events of the 7th of October last year, Jersey Overseas Aid this year alone has provided about £700,000 worth of aid through various NGOs, and altogether with the contributions the year before, Jersey has provided about £1 million worth of aid to Gaza.
Supplemental question, Deputy.
Can she confirm that the intention is to continue doing that despite the Israeli actions in shutting down the aid through UNRWA?
We certainly look for opportunities when we can get aid in. Our last contribution was actually to Lebanon. We made a contribution a couple of weeks ago of 150,000 to UNICEF in Lebanon, because as the Deputy will be aware, some of the children have fled over the border there.
Thank you, sir. Could the Minister outline how she ensures that Jersey's ODA spend remains fully transparent so external organisations and local stakeholders can monitor fund allocation, assess project impact and provide feedback to improve aid effectiveness?
I'm not entirely sure how to answer this question. Our ODAs, in actual fact, all our budget is open to scrutiny, and we believe we've got processes that are open and transparent, and we're more than happy to share them with people. We have a website which is accessible, and our projects can be looked at there.
Supplemental question, Deputy General.
Yes, thank you. Most donors use monitoring tools that allow external organisations and local stakeholders to access real-time information to help impact evaluations by external organisations on funded projects. Has the Minister considered utilising international monitoring tools such as the International Aid Transparency Initiative to support transparency of Jersey's ODA?
Sir, I believe we do use real-time monitoring equipment to look at our projects, and if the Deputy has a look on our website, she'll be able to see that that's what we do.
Well, Deputy Dorey.
Thank you, sir. As winter is fast approaching, can the Minister share an update on Jersey's continued commitment to the humanitarian response in Ukraine?
Yes, I thank the Deputy for her question, and it's extremely timely as winter is approaching. And I confirm in answering the question that Jersey Overseas Aid is committed to standing with Ukraine at this time. Recently, we responded to an appeal by UNHCR for their winterization programme, and we contributed to that fund that provides not only cash, but also help with generators and heating equipment and other such things. And indeed, the Bailiffs Fund also contributed to that too.
Supplemental question, Deputy Dorey.
Thank you, sir. As part of transparency, can the Minister share with the Assembly what sort of support has JOA given so far to this war? Thank you.
Yes, since the war started, Jersey has contributed in total £4.1 million. Now, that's not all from Jersey Overseas Aid. It is from your fund, sir, and I think for a small island, I think we ought to be incredibly proud of our donations to the Ukraine.
So my question has been asked. Okay.
Are there any other questions for this Minister? If there are no other questions for the Minister, then I close this period of questions, and the next question is the Chief Minister, who will take up all of the remaining time available. Deputy Wilson.
Thank you, sir. Can the Chief Minister confirm what he can do, or explain what he can do to restore confidence in his government in the face of indecision around the ferry tender?
We can resolve it as quickly as possible. I don't think the government at this stage has completely lost the confidence, I hope not, of states members and members of the public, but we're alive to the fact that it needs to be sorted. but reiterate, it needs to be kept very, very carefully considered because of the ramifications and consequences of getting it wrong, sir. So our intention is to resolve it, make an appointment as quickly as possible.
Supplemental question, Deputy?
Thank you, sir. Could the Chief Minister explain what contingency he will have in the event that no decision will be made by the end of December?
There will be a decision made, sir, and the contingency will depend on that decision. For example, if the decision is to remain with the existing operator, depending on the financial guarantees and so forth provided, that would lead to one set of contingency. If it was to change to a new provider, that could require a different set of contingency, sir, depending on when the existing operator decided to cease a sailing. So it depends on the outcome, sir. But we will, without fail, make a decision in the timelines outlined by the Minister for Sustainable Economic Development.
Deputy Miles.
Thank you, sir. Has the Chief Minister identified where the funding is going to come from to reinstate the movable toddler play service?
Yes, and I discussed the matter with the relevant ministers. The money is going to be allocated from the pilot fund, so the Chief Minister's pilot fund.
Supplemental question, Deputy Miles?
Thank you, sir. Was the Chief Minister disappointed that he needed to change government policy in this respect via social media? And how will he ensure in future that he can shape policy before it's announced?
I don't think there was any government policy change in this at all. This was a decision taken externally by an arm's length organisation, Jersey Sport, to do an excellent job, working on the back of the report, sir, to focus on providing more input to sport. So they decided that this particular activity didn't fit in that portfolio, so decided to cut it, sir. Having seen that and seen firsthand the consternation it was causing, I decided to post a tweet, subsequently discussed it with the relevant ministers, and found a solution. So it's not a change in government policy. I think it's reacting to the decision of an arm's length organisation that keeps a valuable service going.
Deputy Renouf.
Yes, sir. At the end of questions with notice, we heard a devastating critique of Condor's financial position from the Minister for Sustainable Economic Development, which revealed that they asked for £40 million to keep going a year ago, and in September asked for more money just to continue with the contract until the end of March. What's stopping the government just giving the contract to the other operator, DFDS?
So I'm not sure it's advisable or wise to comment on or provide an answer to that question in this forum, given the fact that we are in the middle of discussions with both operators. Thank you.
Supplemental question, Deputy Renouf.
So can I change tack then and ask, what will the government do if Condor asks for more money just to complete the contract by the end of March?
I think that's a hypothetical question, sir, because it depends on the outcomes of discussions and appointments. So we'd have to address that if the matter arose and based on the circumstances at the time. But what I would say is this government will not do anything that compromises or endangers our lifeline freight service, either if that resolves itself in the appointment of a new operator or means we have to utilise the contingency. We will ensure those safeguards are in place.
Deputy Dublé.
Thank you, sir. Is the Chief Minister aware of countries such as Australia who are planning to legislate for social media use in children? Is he aware of the harms of social media use in children? And is he planning to address this for our children in Jersey?
I think we are all becoming more aware of the ramifications and the harm in some cases of the use of social media across society, not just in children, but especially in children. That's something we haven't, as far as I'm aware, discussed as yet, but I would defer to the Minister for Education and Lifelong Learning or the Minister for Children and Young People, because they might be thinking about that, sir. And I would think in the not too distant future we need to be addressing those sort of matters.
Supplementary question, Deputy.
Thank you, sir. I believe there was a piece of work led by the former Deputy Jess Pershard in a previous government. Would the Chief Minister agree to look into that work and follow it up if necessary?
Yes, happy to discuss with the relevant ministers. Thank you.
Deputy Kovacs.
Thank you, sir. In recent news, the Bishop of Huddersfield stated that the Archbishop of Canterbury position is untenable due to his handling of abuse allegations. In light of this ongoing controversy, what has the Chief Minister discussed with the Dean of Jersey regarding the issue, and what is Jersey's official position on the matter, particularly given the island's historical and institutional links to the Church of England and its handling of similar abuse cases?
Well, so first of all, I have to say I've been preoccupied with other matters and haven't had a chance to familiarise myself with that story through the national media, and subsequently I haven't had any discussions with the Dean on it, sir.
Supplemental,
Okay. How does the Chief Minister believe the abuse controversy will impact trust in local church, and what steps will the government take to prevent abuse in Jersey's institutions in general, particularly in addressing concerns around safeguarding, transparency and institutional accountability?
Well, so I believe the church and generally all religious organisations are alive to this issue, and many have taken great steps to combat it. Of course, it's not been fully resolved, as we've heard, sir. And I think it's something we need to be mindful of in this Assembly and the government. But at this moment in time, so I'm not aware of this being part of our work stream. So, however, I am prepared to discuss it with the relevant religious leaders if necessary. If necessary, sir, if only just to be updated on their procedures and their policies and strategy for combating it.
Deputy Joseph.
Thank you, sir. So question time is necessary. It's not personal, however, searching questions are required, as uncomfortable it is to the Chief Minister. And I put it to him, sir, how can he say with one breath that Condor Ferries is okay to sign a contract, because he said Condor Ferries could be signed, and in the next breath, hear, or with his ear, hear the Economic Development Minister saying Condor Ferries is effectively broke and you can't sign a contract? How can he justify those two statements and give confidence to islanders that he as Chief Minister is actually holding the right sort of management level, giving the right signals and support to his ministers?
I think we were referring to Brittany Ferries. I don't believe Condor Ferries is certainly not broke. Brittany Ferries is certainly not broke, and I don't think the Minister made that assertion. He did alert members to the fact that Condor Ferries have significant amount of borrowing, sir. And I think we need to be careful here, because as I said in a previous answer, we are having discussions with two reputable shipping companies, Brittany Ferries, who are the majority shareholder in Condor, and DS, sir. So I refute the fact we've made assertions that Condor are broke or going broke. We've just the Minister, sir, has alerted members to the concerns over the level of borrowing they have, primarily in relation to being able to invest in ships in the future. So we have to be very, very, very clear. No assertions that anybody's going broke, sir, but it is right to consider the financial implications into the future.
Supplemental question, David.
Sir, I'm afraid to say the Chief Minister is not going to get away with answering a question like that, because will he confirm that the counterparty to sign the tender is Condor Ferries Limited, and not actually Brittany Ferries. It's actually spelt publicly out in the JCRA document of the acquisition, and it's not Brittany Ferries. Brittany Ferries is simply the potential acquirer of 51%. And would he confirm, for the avoidance of doubt, because he's slipping around with the answer, could he confirm that it's actually Condor Ferries, which the Minister is talking about, and it's Condor Ferries that have got the financial problems, and he says earlier that it's fine?
I think the Deputy is slipping around with the question, sir, because I'm not sure. Is he talking about the existing agreement, the existing service level agreement, or is he talking about a new agreement?
Well, I think the question was, I think the Deputy is juxtaposing the thought that the relevant party, I won't name it at this point, has had financial difficulties to the extent it's required to ask for subsidy, as against the assertion that that same party could sign a contract to continue or to deal with the ferry service. And I think the question is, are these the same parties? I mean, it's really...
I'll attempt to...
I can put it simply, is there going to be a deal? Are we talking about a deal with Condor or not? Because Brittany Ferries is not the player. Could he confirm it's Condor Ferries that we're talking about? And he said earlier he's got confidence in that.
Now, I appreciate that you're exercised about this, Deputy, and I appreciate that it's a matter of obviously concern to members in the Assembly, but we have to maintain decorum with it and address questions through the Chair, and I've already indicated what I think the question was about. The question time is far from over, so I'm afraid the Chief Minister will have a few more opportunities to answer questions.
Thank you, sir. I didn't think injury time was allowed in question time, but...
Though there isn't injury time, but there is 5 minutes left.
Thank you. The current service level agreement, as I understand, is signed between the Harbour Master and Condor Ferries. When that was signed, sir, they were owned by Macquarie. The shareholding has now changed, and Brittany Ferries are a shareholder, sir. I would suggest that any new agreement, sir, would not necessarily be signed with Condor, but perhaps I could suggest the government would be more comfortable with that new agreement being with Brittany Ferries. So this is part of the discussions that are ongoing on who would be the signatory to a contract. There's nothing decided in that area yet. These are all part of the complex discussions that have been had and will continue to be had.
Deputy Gardner. Thank you, sir. I'll change the ferry this time. Probably Chief Minister will be pleased. Written question 375 asked the Chief Minister to provide detailed breakdown per ministerial portfolio of each of the projects and work streams which have been delayed or stopped. In his answer, Chief Minister advised that I have asked officers to review these responses, which were then done to the scrutiny, to ensure that this information has been provided and published for all ministers. Would the Chief Minister advise if he will publish one joint document for the clarity for the public and for all states members per each ministerial portfolio which project were cancelled or delayed?
Yes, sir. I think in the answer, I alluded to the fact that I believe ministers in the course of their engagement with scrutiny had provided this information, and I've asked officers to ensure they have, and we'll ask them to consolidate that information if required, sir. No problem.
Thank you, Chief. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Chief Minister. And it was really helpful oral answer for the previous question by his Environment Minister. Some ministers provided, some ministers not. When this will be published, would it be published this or next week ahead of the budget debate that we can really consider what we are voting for?
I'm sure we can consolidate the majority of what's already been published there, and I'll ask officials to make sure it's as comprehensive as possible.
Thank you very much. Any other questions for the Chief Minister? Deputy Renouf.
Yes, and can I ask whose idea was it to offer the 7-month extension to Condor, and was it in response to the Hospitality Association letter?
I'm not sure it was directly in response to the hospitality letter, but probably partially in response to the hospitality a letter, because they made very clear their concerns about the delay in allowing bookings for next summer. So notwithstanding that in previous years the timetable hasn't been published till later on. And as I said before, it was a genuine attempt to provide some certainty to help Brittany Ferries, to enable them to get their timetables up and take bookings for next summer, and then to allow us a bit more time to complete the process. I think in a meeting, sir, the idea was originally suggested by Deputy Morel, and I agreed with it. I thought it would be a sensible solution. Thank you.
Supplemental question, Deputy Renouf.
Yes, sir. One commentator at the weekend described the invitation to Condor to continue as like telling your partner you want a divorce, but asking to keep on sleeping together for another 7 months whilst you sort out your new relationship. Why did the government think this would ever be attractive to Condor?
Trying to compare the analogy, sir.
Yes. Yes.
As I've said before, it was a genuine attempt to provide some certainty for the travelling public and for Condor to allow them to extend their operational agreement till the end of October next year. That was the intention, that nothing more and nothing less than to try and be helpful to the travelling public, to Condor, sir, and to allow more time for us to deliver our decision. There's no more to it than that.
Deputy John.
Thank you, sir. Does the Minister feel that the procurement processes of the government are considered robust enough to handle such issues like what we've just heard, where Condor was in financial difficulties or was asking for subsidies on its current contract, but it was still allowed to continue to bid quite far down the line within the procurement processes? And is there checks and balances, enough checks and balances put in place in a procurement process to ensure these type of issues are raised early enough in the process?
In short, sir, yes, I do. I'm not prepared to go into the detail of those scores in this forum for reasons outlined before, whilst we're in the middle of discussions. I'm sure the Minister for Sustainable Economic Development will provide a private briefing to members when we can go into that in more detail if necessary, sir. But I do believe that the procurement procedures in this were robust enough. Unfortunately, Jersey and Guernsey couldn't agree on an outcome, and I'm not sure there's any contract or agreement that can ever get Jersey and Guernsey to agree on most things, sir, but we did our best. And I don't think that's the fault of the process. I think that's just because the islands had different views and different decisions for their own reasons at the end of the day.
Supplemental question?
Yes, sir. I think once this whole process is put to the seabed, would we be able to, would the Minister agree that a full investigation should be undertaken, and if there is identification for more robust procurement processes to be put in place for those to be enacted and a review taking place?
Well, sir, as we all know, we never stop learning from what we do, and I think I expect the process to be well scrutinised, and whether we want to take it further than that ultimately is a matter for the Assembly, sir. But we certainly need to learn from it. When I became Economic Development Minister in 2014, I inherited something called the Liberation, sir, which was one Condor's new vessel with a new operating agreement, which we learned since then. Trying to work with has been difficult because it doesn't contain the controls that we need. So we've learned from that, and any new contract, sir, will have taken that into account. So I can assure members that whoever we end up with, the contract will be much sharper and much more appropriate to protect the islands. I might even suggest we give them a 50 early so we don't have to deal with it again for a long time.
That brings the period of questions to the Chief Minister to a close.
Sorry, sir, we're just all looking at the clock, which seems to suggest there's a bit more time.
I don't mind.
The clock that's operating is going on the system that's up here. I have functioned entirely throughout the morning on the clock on my iPhone, and I can say the time has elapsed, definitely. I would be extending it artificially were I to do otherwise, I'm afraid, Deputy Renouf, which is not within my gift. There is now an urgent oral question that I have given permission to ask from Deputy Renouf of the Minister for Sustainable and Economic Development. I will allow 7 minutes for this because that was the normal allowance that I made for all of the other oral questions which were dealt with during the question period. Very well, Deputy.
I'll read quickly. Will the Minister explain how he justifies more than £5 million of direct grants to Visit Jersey, Ports of Jersey, the rural and marine sports schemes and others when the main purpose of the scheme has always been advertised as to improve productivity?
Thank you, sir, and I think a very interesting question, one that I think it is quite simple to justify. It is correct, sir, that a significant proportion of the productivity support scheme, the living wage support scheme is what I should say, sir, is focused on the visitor economy and the rural and marine economies, sir. The first reason for that is both the visitor economy and the rural and marine economies have been identified as having as being significantly impacted by the increase in the minimum wage, which has risen, I believe, if everything goes ahead as planned, it will have risen 72% in 5 years. That obviously causes stress and concern for those businesses. As I've said, the visitor economy and the rural and marine economy have been identified through economic analysis as being two of the sectors which are most significantly impacted. With regard to the actual impact on productivity, the inclusion of Visit Jersey and Ports of Jersey is entirely focused around the concept of them extending or growing our visitor economy by bringing more visitors to the island, sir, particularly in the shoulder and the winter months. By doing so, they will be increasing the productivity of those businesses that they frequent. So at the moment, sir, a hotel, for instance, is full in August, but not full in October. By providing more visitors to them in October, their return on investment, the productivity of their assets increases. They are employing staff who will be put to work in terms of gaining more value by having more tourists spending with them during those months, whereas at the moment they aren't. In terms of the rural and marine economy, sir, that is much more focused on competitiveness. At the moment, the rural and marine economies have to compete against European, British, and other economies that highly subsidise their agriculture sectors. Given that our agriculture and marine sectors are primarily export sectors, in order for them to remain competitive, given the wage rises that are being put upon them, we believe that it is absolutely right to use the existing support schemes to reduce the impact of those wage rises, and by doing so, help those industries remain competitive against the international markets, highly subsidised international markets in which they operate.
Supplementary.
Yes, sir. Focusing on the rural support scheme, the Minister told me off in September for referring to subsidies. The current rural support scheme is an extra £1 million going into this, 1.1 million. The current rural support scheme has 3 tiers, 3 different types of grants, none of which are related to productivity. How can he ensure that the money going to the rural support scheme will actually go to increasing productivity? Or if it's not doing that, make sure that it isn't just a general subsidy to employers?
So, as I've discussed, sir, the agriculture and the marine element of this is focused on competitiveness so that they can remain competitive in their international markets. So we have analysed the impact of the rise in the minimum wage on those sectors. And in the case of this sector, that £1.1 million is entirely, has been calculated as the amount that the industry will have to pay extra in terms of wages. Therefore, by putting in the £1.1 million, we are effectively balancing off the increased cost. That helps them remain competitive in their export markets. That in itself, sir, gives them a chance at increasing productivity, because if they are to sell more, their high quality products are able to be sold in overseas markets at a competitive rate. That then provides them with the opportunity to increase their productivity as well, sir. But the primary focus for agriculture and marine is on competitiveness. Thank you, sir.
Deputy Joseph.
So, would the Minister agree that there is always going to be consequences of putting a decision off or making the wrong decision? And as we have heard, the implications of the cannabis industry is causing major issues. There's some benefit. The ferry services, Sir John Vickers wasn't listened to. We've now got problems, and he's having to deal with it. He lodged yesterday a package of measures of 20 million on the well-intentioned idea of this Assembly to move to a living wage. There's been no scrutiny. There's lots of questions about it. It's been taken from the Social Security Fund. That's probably going to be a problem for the government. Does he really think that he should be pressing ahead with this package in this absence of information, and only having yesterday members having received the detail of what is a huge amount of money being spent? Isn't it about time to say, enough's enough, we need to pause this?
Sir, I wouldn't mind a bit of clarification on the very end. We need to pause this. We need to pause what, the living wage support scheme, or we need to pause the rise in the minimum wage.
So I think both of them, the two are inextricably linked. We're doing something, we're blindly going ahead with basically dealing with things that have had unintended consequences in taxpayers' millions.
Clarification is one thing, a second preamble is a different thing. Yes, please.
Thank you, sir, but that 7 minutes continues to tick down. But sir, from the perspective of a state's decision was taken in 2021 in response to Deputy Southern's proposition, and that proposition, which was adopted by the States Assembly, said that we would bring the minimum wage up to 2/3 of median wage by 2024. That's what is being delivered on. It's a States Assembly decision. As a result of that States Assembly decision and the desire of the government to deliver on that decision, we are saying that we understand the stress that places on employers, and employers of all sorts, from businesses to charities and all other institutions in between. And what we are saying is we want to help you cope with these pressures by helping you become more productive. Jersey, unfortunately, has a very low rate of business investment. It is lower than the UK's rate of business investment, and in itself, the UK's rate is the lowest of the G7 nations. So I am very concerned about business investment in this island, and I'm very concerned about the rate of productivity in this island. By designing a package of support measures which focuses primarily on productivity, but also has competitiveness as part of it, we are helping businesses in this island make those investments in themselves so that they become more productive, more resilient and robust to be competitive in the future, and to make sure that Jersey has a high-performing economy for the future. So in that sense, sir, I do believe this is absolutely the right thing to do.
Yes. A supplemental question then?
Not at this stage. It's not right to take up any more time, but there's a clear problem here.
There's 1 minute to go, Deputy Jonathan.
Thank you. Unlike previous schemes, the decision-making on how and who gets funds seems to have been outsourced to Jersey Business. Does the Minister believe they have the capacity to deliver?
Yes, sir. In short, we have been working with Jersey Business on this. We are making sure that they have the resources, and part of the productivity support scheme, part of that support package has a very small amount to help resource Jersey Business in this. But it's absolutely right that we look to an independent grant provider who does that work rather than having that within government. I think that's absolutely the right thing to do. And we've also designed the processes to be swift on the one hand, where it's small amounts of grants, and to be more onerous on the other hand, where they're larger grants, so that we're able to help deliver for businesses in the way that they need to. So I do think that's absolutely the right thing to do.
That brings the time that I've allocated for this urgent oral question to an end. There is a further stage before we move on to public business, which is a statement to be made by the Minister for Education and Lifelong Learning. We are 5 minutes off the normal adjournment time, thereabouts, 5 or 10 minutes off it. It's a matter for members whether they wish to continue. As they know, if there is a statement, then there will be a 15-minute question period.
I'd like to propose we do it now. I'd like to propose we do it now, sir.
I'd like to propose an adjournment.
Is that, I mean, there's no point in wasting time deciding whether to do it now. The Chief Minister has proposed that. I would just propose to put that. Is it seconded? Yes. Members agreeing to continue until we finish the statement, kindly show. Members against? I think for me to make a judgment call on that, other than to count you all manually, we'll have to do the appel. Invite members to return to their seat. The proposition is to continue with the statement from the Minister until it's concluded. Ask the greffier to open the voting. A vote pour means we continue until we finish that matter. Members have had the opportunity of casting their vote. Ask the greffier to close the voting. And we continue, 23 votes for, 14 votes contra, no abstentions. Yes. Minister.
Thank you, sir. I was expecting to go to lunch then. Okay. Thank you, sir. So at the end of October, I published my early years plan. This formed part of my commitment to ensure transparency as the work on early years progresses, both with the Assembly and the public. In particular, the Children Education and Home Affairs panel wished to know how the work to develop the extended nursery revision would be progressed. So reports can sometimes be lodged without any real discussion in this Assembly. Today I would like to make this statement and take questions on the plan to encourage transparency and to be clear on the plan itself. Within the Common Strategic Policy 24-26 that was approved in May 2024, I and the rest of the Council of Ministers made the top priority of this plan to extend nursery and childcare provision. It is important to remember why this priority was proposed and approved. Importantly, evidence is clear that increasing the capacity of a quality provision of early childhood education and care can have a transformative and positive effect on young children. As Minister for Education and Lifelong Learning, this is something I care deeply about. Secondly to that, there are a number of further benefits which will be recognised by the delivery of this government priority and felt by a large proportion of islanders, either directly or indirectly. Namely, sir, improved access and choice for families as childcare spaces increase, a strengthened position for Jersey to attract and retain working families, utilisation of capacity in school workforce and or other premises, increasing training and support for the existing nursery provision, and a drive to increase the value of those who work in this vital sector. So I've listened and heard from parents with young children, online petitions, emails and direct messages, how difficult it can be to secure childcare for their young children. This doesn't just impact upon those people directly, it impacts on our wider economy and retention of a working age population. We committed to actions, not words, and this is what we have done. In order to truly understand how to best respond to the demand, we have begun a series of pilots, each with its own specific scope, objectives and measurement. Running pilots means that we can test these operating models to better inform our policy decisions ahead of moving to a universal offer and increased capacity at the same time. Pilots also assist in wider understanding of the economic impact of any change and how they best support provision across the sector. From September of this year, we have 3 schools operating pilot schemes. 2 provisions for 2 to 3-year-olds have opened, prioritising those with greatest need. These children were unable to access current nursery provision. This is created within existing government school buildings. This does not mean there is a formal classroom teaching. The sessions are tailored by professionals for the age group and ability. We are simply utilising existing space in government buildings, thus reducing the overheads. And my sincere thanks go to those schools and Jersey Childcare Trust for developing the provision at such pace. This is a brand new model where a third-party provider is operating from existing government locations and one we are open to rolling out further. Trialling extended wraparound care for 3 to 4-year-olds in 3 government preschools, we know that limited hours in government preschool settings without wraparound care can make it difficult for working parents. We hope that these pilots will show us whether extending the provision and providing greater parent and carer choice creates more overall capacity within the system where there is identified need. All the pilots will be reviewed at the end of the academic year in 2025. Over the course of 2025, we hope to build on these pilots, and SIPES officers are already exploring options. All these actions have a context and build upon progress that has already been made, and I acknowledge all the previous work in this area. The evidence paper on optimising early childhood education and childcare, ECEC, commissioned in 2023 and published by ISOS Partnership in 1st of August 2023, has been used to shape future policy. The roundtable events from November 2023 to January 24 identified key guiding principles which continue to inform policy development. This constitutes a significant level of engagement across the sector before any pilots commenced. Early years policy has been a constant area of focus over the last decade for each minister in post, and I would like to thank the previous minister and assistant minister for focusing this area. We are here thanks to a significant amount of work that has gone into research, consultations with parents and families and professional providers across the industry. The report itself details a number of key milestones. I will not list them in this statement, so it can be read. The feedback and engagement with our nurseries, childminders, nannies and regulators, schools and charities have all helped to shape our analysis and improve the accessibility families have to early years care and education for their children. Amongst other priorities, their input and consultation have helped us understand that recruitment and retention within the sector is a challenge. And so from September, we have become a recruitment campaign assisted by the Best Start Partnership to promote the range of careers available within the early years sector. Further work is already underway to co-develop a plan to include investment through continuing professional development. So the right care at the right moment requires a responsiveness and sensitivity that should be recognised as serious professional work. We must recognise the value of those who work in this sector to our society. I am grateful to all of those who represent the industry that have met with me, written to me and offered their valuable insight and experience. We want the changes we are developing to benefit those who utilise early years childcare and education, but also the providers of this care. First and foremost, however, we want the changes to benefit the island's children. I'm sure members will agree that the work delivered in the priority has been done at a significant pace. I am both impressed and grateful that we are already offering placements for children in our pilot schemes that prior to this were not accessing early years care. The work, however, doesn't stop here, and as I previously mentioned, officers are already working on further pilots to be rolled out. This is crucial as it evidences a track record of delivering positive change, making further investment in early years, a decision we can make with confidence. The investments required will reap benefits that impact current generations, but also beyond for years to come. So thank you for the opportunity to make this statement. I hope members have the opportunity to read the published report, and I would welcome any questions they have. Thank you, sir.
Well, there is now a period of 15 minutes of questions. Deputy Dublé.
Thank you, sir. I'm sure this was probably an error, but one of the policy initiatives from the previous government was a grant, a start-up grant for childminders, which was implemented last year, I believe. Is the Minister maintaining this, and how else is he supporting childminders to offer their services to families?
Yeah, thank you, sir. I thank the Deputy for the question. I was sat here thinking there will be something where I have not got in my extensive notes. I believe that is the case, but I will not say anything to the Deputy in this case. Let me double check and get back to you. Will reassure the Deputy I am meeting with childminders. We were meant to meet recently, but there was illness and you have to meet after work because they're working all day. I am very keen. I have met with the chair of the childminders group and I'm going to meet one-to-one with childminders to reassure and ensure that on all sorts of areas of the development that we have. But yes, absolutely support childminders and we want to increase the number of childminders if we can. Thank you.
Supplementary question.
Yes, thank you, sir, and I thank the Minister for his answers. The Childminders Association is part of the Best Start Partnership. Is the Minister meeting with the Best Start Partnership? And what were the partnership's views on this? Were there any that express any dissent to this plan?
Thank you, sir. Yes, one of them, ironic, so I met with Dr. Cathy Hamer online recently to have a good discussion. One of the problems is the Best Start Partnership meetings are always when the ministerial meetings are, so I'm going to have to prioritise those. The Best Start Partnership represents from across the sector, every single part of the sector, and I think in general the response is very positive. What we need to ensure is that every part of the sector understands the change and is reassured that the changes that we're going to make is for the best interest of everyone involved. It is counterintuitive to do anything that limits nursery places when we're trying to increase nursery places. So by running pilots, we can ensure that that doesn't happen. And the Best Start Partnership is a really key source of information for us as we move forward. So.
Deputy Catherine Curtis.
Thank you, sir. In the report, there's a focus on training. Can the Minister explain what support will be given for training and also confirm whether the full-time childcare studies are included in critical skills courses so that students can claim income support? And if not, why not?
Thank you, sir. Good question. We are currently working with the Social Security Minister to update those critical skills courses so that it's a much easier place. And yes, I would want those courses to be included in that. So the first part of the question, I was so focused on the second part. Could you just repeat the first part? Sorry, sir.
Yes, just generally about the support given for training.
Yes, thank you, sir. So far in the recruitment campaign, 46 candidates are engaged with the early years recruitment team. 4 candidates have applied for vacancies for the early years recruitment team. They're engaged with 16 early years settings, nurseries, preschools, playgroups and charities, and 18 candidates attended the events. And so the support is both the beginning of encouragement to get people involved in the sector, the provision of courses to support them in the sector, and the provision of training and CPD within those who are already in the sector itself so that we can increase the skills across the board, which is what we need to do.
Yes. I can't remember. Was that supplemental or not? Deputy Jonathan.
Thank you, sir. The pilots going ahead are all offering something slightly different. What measures, outcomes and data is the Minister using to determine the individual pilots have been successful and cost effective?
Thank you, sir. Yes, and that is one of the... We have a sort of a catch-22 with data, because when you run pilots and you run a range of pilots, you are going to obviously get perhaps data from different areas that is not comparable with each other. So, for example, those pilots that are being run by those young people, those children with additional needs, which we can't access nursery, one of the indicators was simply the numbers that are being able to access nursery, and there are key indicators which... I'm not a specialist in early years provision of teaching, other areas, I might be able to talk you through that, but certainly JCCT have particular indicators which show progression from those groups, so that would be one of the examples of that. The other key indicators are whether there is an uptake, for example, of the wraparound provision. We are trying to identify where the need is and then address that need. If the need is not there, then we work in other areas. But we've got to be flexible and we've got to be able to utilise all of the facilities that we have in order to provide that childcare as the best possible way we can. Thank you.
Supplemental question, Deputy.
Yes, sir, thank you. I think that's what the Minister was talking about was about assessment of the children themselves, where my question was really asking was that wider monitoring and impact of the pilot project for, I suppose, his vision of providing wraparound care and nursery care for both 3 to 4 year olds, and then for those that are younger, for 2-year-olds as well. I'm not quite sure about what the Minister's vision is in the future, so I suppose that's my second question. And then related to what I was asking before is how will he be measuring those pilot projects, because they're all slightly different, to help to I suppose support his vision.
Thank you, sir. And I think, Deputy, the vision is very clear. The vision is provide the nursery provision that is necessary for the island so that we can introduce a NEF a NEF fund for 2 to 3 year olds, which supports parents with 2 to 3 year olds. Initially, I'm looking at around 15 hours, but we'll see how that goes. And the second clear part of the vision is to ensure that all of the resources we have, the facilities we have, are utilised to their utmost so that parents can access childcare when they need it, where they need it, so that they can utilise the facilities that we have. And doing so at the right time for the right reasons. It's not about setting up a competition for nurseries that are already there. It's about providing the extra nurseries places that have been identified through the ISOS report and all of the work that's going on. So I think that's clear as to what I want to do to make sure that's available. In terms of the measurements, there will be numerous. One will be, are those places being filled? Are there still large waiting lists? Are the provisions being used effectively around the island in terms of the places being used that we provide? And finally, are there places available so that we can offer a universal 2 to 3 year old offer and parents can actually access it? Because it's easy to say, here's your offer, if there are no nursery places available. So those are the sort of general indicators as to whether that works for me in terms of introducing it. In terms of standards, that already happens with the standards that are set by the department anyway in nursery care. Thank you, sir.
Deputy Wilson.
Thank you, sir. Could the Minister explain whether there's been any impact assessment on the effect in the private sector by introducing the pilot projects? And could I also ask, if I may, that the targeting of these pilots is not going to be protected just in the sort of St Helier area, but we are looking broadly across the island to be able to expand the provision? Yes,
thank you, sir. Thank you, Deputy. Yes, one of the reasons for undertaking the pilot is to see the impact across the sector. As I said before, it is completely counterintuitive if our need for more nursery places to then produce a system that closes down nurseries. I don't believe that is what we want to do. That is not our aim. There is not about competition. It's providing, using the facilities that we have, often in schools that are not being used, so we don't have to build new facilities, but we can use them. Part of that will be to use facilities across the island because there are non-town schools, if I can put it that way, which have plenty of places that can be utilised. The best way to do that is exactly why we're running pilots, both in terms of those young people who can't access and need extra care, which in the settings that they're in, and also to utilise those spaces as best as possible without damaging in any way the resource and the capacity that we have already. One of the good things about using the school facilities is there's a huge flexibility in schools. So if that need is not there, it's a lot easier to, if you like, move away from that facility there than it is for another company that is set up in a particular way. So it gives us huge flexibility, and we will need that flexibility because of the variation in numbers that we will have. And the unpredictability in some ways of the numbers longer into the future. But that's another, perhaps, a question that somebody might want to ask. Thanks.
Supplemental question?
Could I ask the Minister, will the pilots take into consideration the diversity of need? And is it possible that there may well be a 2-tier service emerging from the pilots?
Thank you, sir. Obviously, it would take all nurseries should take into account all of our provision for early years should take into account diversity of needs, because children are not one big conglomerate of sameness. Indeed, it's exactly the opposite. So I would say that to begin with. I don't see it as two-tier. I would say more specialist help in particular areas, but I wouldn't tier those two things, sir. The nursery provision will be appropriate, the right provision at the right time for the right needs in the best possible place we can do it. In fact, some of the dialogue around what we're doing, I would like to change, and I would like to, from this point, really move away from that notion of two tiers. It's about getting the right need where it's needed. Some children may need more input from specialist areas, all sorts of specialist areas, but that's going to enable those children to develop so they're in a better position when they do start school later on. And that's the success of intervention in early years, and which I hope we can undertake.
Deputy Gardner.
Thank you, sir. The Minister referred to ISIS report during his statement. What plans does Minister have to progress on other, all recommendations in the report, and if he had consulted with the Jersey Early Years Association for progressing with all recommendations?
There are quite a few recommendations in the report. I have met with the Jersey Early Years Association twice already, and I'm meeting again on the 5th of December, and there's been consistent officer engagement as well from that sector of the economy, of the provision. The main summary recommendations, and we have to prioritise in terms of nursery. So there's one, for example, sir. I've got so many notes here, I should have cut them down a little bit, to be honest. The guiding principles were really key about we need holistic and joined-up work across the service. We need a stronger, clearer offer to families, but not a one-size-fits-all. And those are the sorts of... This is the difficulty, but also the challenge, but also, I think, the very successful thing that we can undertake. We have had these discussions from all sectors of the provision of early years. We've come up with some key principles which are on the ISOS report. What I've decided to do is to focus on the provision of early years, nursery provision. Other areas such as family hubs, they can absolutely happen. They're part of a different provision though, and they are separate from early years. It's not either or, it's both of these things. But this part of the CSP voted for by this Assembly is about the provision of nursery provision on the early years so we can move towards a universal offer for 2 to 3 year olds. And I think that is a very separate but very key thing that we have to do in the coming years.
Supplemental question.
Absolutely. It's important to understand that 75% of the Not 5 providers are in the private sector. The private sector reached out to scrutiny and raised concern. What work has been done to understand this concern and whether they're real and can be mitigated to continue provision to early years, not to 2, which might be affected by the Minister's plan?
Yes, thank you, sir. Thank you, Deputy. So the concerns raised, there are a number of concerns raised from a scrutiny letter, which we can address. Some of those areas, I have to say, I simply don't agree that they are issues that were going to be a problem. Other areas, such as the effect of increasing nursery places on current private nurseries, I am not, and I'll say this again, producing a competition. If there are long waiting lists, if there are waiting lists...
I'm sorry, Minister, that brings to an end the period available to you for questions as a result of this statement. Is the adjournment proposed?
Yes, sir.
The Assembly stands adjourned until 2:50.